Greetings and salutations. Ben here. Welcome to the Sunday Night Hang / Sunday Night Hang podcast / Sunday Night Hang live stream here on the YouTubes. Hey, if you're tuning in for the first time, please subscribe. New or returning, all I ask for is a thumbs up and maybe a hello in the chat. As I said before, I'm Ben, and tonight I'm hanging out with, we were talking off air. We've known each other a couple of years virtually, at least, chattily, and then two-dimensionally, and then we've done a couple of hangs together on our good friend Fruitcake Tony's channel. So give it up for Charles Greene, veteran of the music scene in more ways than one, and quickly becoming a veteran of the YouTube community in a way too, which is awesome. Hey, buddy.
How are you guys doing this evening? It's good to see everybody. Hope you guys are doing well. Yeah. Love this channel, Ben. It's been a couple of years. My first memories of you are really good. I love your channel. There's a really great community that we're a part of. It's funny. I'll use an analogy. It's kind of like the high school cafeteria. And there's different tables everywhere, and there's different groups and this and that. I about 2 years ago, I think it's been back in the days when we actually used to have NAMM. And I remember you on a video jumping in Brian Cote's Challenger, coming and meeting him. He hooked up with you, and you guys rolled into NAMM. And those are my first memories of you. You have a gift when you talk to people. You do interviewing really good. I've said this before, but your interviews at that point, that's really what caught me and got me interested in you. You just have a really great mannerism. You guys, some of the people you interviewed were stellar, and everyone just really opens up when you talk to them. You ask the right questions, you do it correctly. And so you caught my eye, you caught my ear. I subbed your channel. And there was a couple of good, I think Guitar Hack at the same time. We were talking about that. I think I subscribed to Hack certainly within a couple of weeks.
Sure.
And love you, Hack, if you're out there, brother. And you're just part of a really good community. You have a positive vibe in your channel. You have good information. If I ever have a question, you're part of my little network. If I have a guitar question, and they come up often.
Sure.
How long you do this stuff changes. You need answers. Your gear's got to work correctly. You're on my list of quick call, shoot an email, this, that, and the other thing to find out how, when, where, and what's on the bench. Last week you were restoring a 6-pack cooler, a vintage 6-pack cooler.
Yeah.
And I just, it's good stuff, Ben. It's good stuff.
It's more than just guitars these days. I always said from day one, there's a reason why this channel is just my name and not called Canucks with Guitars, because I wanted to be as much lifestyle, which for me is, it's my life, so we'll make these fun videos. And, I'm thinking, there's got to be other knuckleheads out there like me that will dig this, for all of us on YouTube. And sure enough, we found each other in many ways, so definitely.
It's a big world. This group that we're part of, it's international. It goes to the other side of the earth. And it's full of really good people. So I've made a lot of great friends in the last couple of years. Yeah. This new YouTube thing is totally new, and I'm tagging along and enjoying the heck out of it. Sure. It's a lot of fun. I still haven't. It's 6 months ago, I was talking to Hack on his channel, and I still haven't posted a video.
Right.
But I'm just about to. Of course, that's the same thing I said to Hack. What I just got into? I've been trying to go into the computer world and get software and run it, computer-driven software. So I finally managed to get everything set up. I'm set up to go. I've got all the capability now to produce the sounds, and I've got all the sounds I want. So I'm really happy with where I'm at right now, and I'm just about to put something up on YouTube. So
Right on.
It's been a long road, and I'm glad I waited, but it's all good.
Sure.
You know.
Sure. And wow, I should give some do roll call here. I realize we're almost 6 minutes in. We got 52 people watching so far.
Really? Wow.
And yeah, great crowd in here. We've got Tim Thomas, Mark Taft, Warlag, Holly Lewis. I think Holly, new name in the chat. Great to have Holly in here.
Holly's a rocker.
The lovely Sandra is here.
Hi, Sandra.
Brother Laz, Music Therapy Laz.
Laz, what's going on, bro?
Dan of New Jersey.
Dan, the man. How you doing, bro?
Terry's 3Gs, moderator to the stars.
Terry, and rocker, bro.
Friend of mine. Let's see here. Who else? We have Milk T, brother of Mark T. Yep. So the T's are here. We've got Thomas Santiago, in from Buffalo. Gear Junkie 35. Chris from Coburg. Absolute Mayhem.
Hey, Mayhem.
Mayhem and I were hanging out together on, what day was that? Friday? There's more on that coming up on tomorrow night's Canucks Guitar Show.
Awesome.
New pedal day? Sure. More than sure. More than one. Yep. Always best to buy in bulk. That's my opinion. Well, yeah. Who else do we have in here? Of course, the one and only Fruitcake Tony.
Johnny, my man. What's up, bro?
Host of Show Me Your Pick and Halenville. Let's see. Who else do we have in here? Vince RJ.
Hey, what's going on, bro?
Excuse me. Zach Thong.
Zach. What's going on, Zach?
Christopher, who wins everything on Fruitcake Tony's channel.
That would be the man, Mr. Sawa. How you doing, brother?
Good saying. Gretch Zeppelin.
Hey, what's going on?
Lewis Cash. Lawrence Cash. Lawrence. I saw the L.
Hey, Lawrence, how are you?
There we are. JP Page 2. BC Rich 581. Speaking of a couple OGs on the channel. Hip Metal Works. John DeShane. Dave the Pious.
What's going on, guys?
Jeff K.
Hey, Jeff.
Symmetry. Keith H. Tall Thin Kev.
Hey, guys.
Got quite the crowd in here. Frosty's here. Jeff Puddlester. House of Twang. Martin Lemaire. See, now I'm getting into the pre-gamers. Randy Crooks. Paulie Walnuts. Other Left. Mark Effects. Scott Brockway. Charles 75N. Michael Krause.
Charles, what's up?
Rude Tech Effects. Billy Baloney. Wow. That's a lot. Yeah.
That's a lot of names I've never heard before.
Milt, thank you.
It's good to see all of you guys, man. I hope everyone's doing well out there. You know, we were just talking. North Carolina got nailed. Me and Tony, actually, Tony, Fruitcake Tony's in the chat. Our weather was very similar, even though we're like 3 hours apart.
Sure.
I've got 3 to 4 inches of solid ice outside on the ground everywhere. And for all intents and purposes, this state is shut down. Oh, yeah. Nothing. If you don't have 4-wheel drive or at least a decent heavy vehicle, you're not going anywhere until your roads get plowed. So I'm fortunate. I drive a big 4-wheel drive truck, so I'm ready for this kind of stuff. But most of the neighborhood that I live in is pretty much locked down right now. So
sure. I saw Chris from Coburg had mentioned like Snowmageddon in the chat, and he's 45 minutes or so directly west of me, so aka upwind. So immediately when I saw that in the chat, when I was setting stuff out, hi Janice, by the way, I looked at the window to see, and it's actually not snowing here, and we got a light dusting, but I can still see more grass than snow in the yard.
Really?
Yeah. Wow. So we'll do tradesies for a day or two. Although I think tomorrow we're supposed to get dumped on. So.
Wow. That's really cool, brother.
Apparently, Charles is wet sanding while watching.
Charles 75 in.
Yes. Do I have a photo of what he's wet sanding? I can't remember. Let's see. Oh yeah, we do.
What are we sanding, Charles? I was going to say, is it a Strat? I was close.
Strat. Oh, that's not going to focus. Closer? No, maybe there.
Nice,
there it is.
Holy moly, dude! That thing is nice. Look
That's
at the
sweet.
intricacy on that pattern.
Yeah.
What is that an overlay? What am I looking at?
He's doing a fabric top.
That's what I meant. A fabric
Yeah.
top.
Yeah, he's
That's
just
really
on the front.
man. Dude, that's unique. That's
Hey, there's Six String Brian.
Brian, how you doing, bro? Good to see you, man.
We got Bozique here. Great to see Bozique.
Dude, I haven't seen you in a while, bro.
Tonefish is here as well.
What's going on, bro?
Wow. And apparently lurking, probably from the studio or snowboarding last week. The Beeve. BV is Salut mon ami. This YouTube thing is worldwide, late here, but listening, so maybe of interest to Charles and all. Buddy Joe B is recording his new album and today in Sunset Studios, Studio 2. Nice. See attached photo and note close fret markers up close to the guitar. All right. So when he says his friend Joe B, he's talking about Joe Bonamassa.
Oh, that is awesome.
And I don't know, the photo is a bit grainy.
That's awesome.
But the fret, he's got some wicked inlays on the Strat. There we go. Almost like the artisan style inlays.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's an absolutely beautiful guitar. He's awesome. He's so awesome.
Yeah. The legend BV reporting in. Strain of the day, Sandra, is, although it's kind of rubbing out, strawberry lime haze.
That sounds absolutely yummy.
Yeah, and that's the price for an ounce, folks. Canadian. Just saying.
Ouch.
It's crazy. I know. Because I mentioned the picture of the guitar. Here's another photo of the guitar. Let's see if we get this beautiful focus. There it is.
What do we know anything about the guitar? What specifically it is?
I don't know. Yeah. I'm sure BV can mention something.
He's got so many nice guitars. It's just ridiculous. But it could be, I can't tell, right? Myself, I can't tell just from looking at it from here.
And I'm just double checking here. Got another message recording in. That it is, in fact, I believe, in the chat here, Mr. Mark Taft, I believe his brother had just mentioned that it's his birthday today.
Hey,
happy birthday to Mark.
Right on, bro.
Thank you, Frosty. Yes, the AFD shirt. Figure why not? It's got sleeves. It's wintertime after all.
Nice threads there, brother. Nice.
It was, you've heard me mention on podcast, karma is real. I went into a record shop or some form of record shop in the mall. They keep it simple for guys like us, Charles. Like, apparently the one record shop went out of business. So another record shop just moves into the exact same location. So for idiots like us that go once a year to the mall,
that's the evolution.
Same thing, different logo, but same thing.
Yeah.
And I was going in there to buy a concert shirt for a buddy's girlfriend because she likes concert shirts. And, I'll buy her that. And I go in there and guess what? 2-for-1 sale. So we each got an Appetite shirt. So we had matching shirts.
Nice, bro. Nice.
Oh, more guitars. Thank you very much, buddy. Here to support guys on the snowed-in night from upstate South Carolina, just south of Charlotte. Nice. Hope all is well and always catch the show when I can. Thanks for moderating the other shows, Ben. You're very welcome, more guitars. I'm very appreciative. I think I know, where he is, that little South Carolina. Yeah, I've got some friends that live in South Carolina that worked in North Carolina. I couldn't figure out when they commuted. I'm like, that's another state. And they look, it's 40 minutes.
20-30 miles from me. 20-30 minutes from me, probably.
Yeah. I know that area well. Spent many years in Concord.
Too. Yeah, they got a lot of ice. A lot of ice down there.
In a contest, perhaps does this person who also there, does anybody know who this is? Does anybody know who this person is? All right, BV's playing games now. Also at the recording session.
I do not. Doesn't ring a bell with me. But I would love to know.
Can't say what the history of the guitar, but keep an eye on Joe's socials. All will be revealed. So there we go. For those, because I know I love following Joe on the socials just for the gear porn. And so when we'll see him come out, like, yeah, BV showed us that a couple weeks ago.
Awesome.
What's up, Adam D?
Hey, Ben, is that a cigar box guitar I see back there on the wall?
You're seeing it above you on the backdrop. It's actually over here.
Is that a Brendan original by any chance?
Oh,
Oh, dude. You know what? I've seen your guitar. You showed it off. It's been a while since I've seen that guitar. And I have always loved it. In fact, he's building me one. I'm talking with him just this next week about it. I'm going to have him build me one. And it's ironic because the one I'm having him build me is very similar to the size and the vibe of what you have. But I went South American. I went South American tobacco, a traditional tobacco company with their logo, but pretty much same size, shape, specs that yours is. And I'm excited, man. I can't wait to get one of those. I want it for slide primarily.
Right. That's what I use it for, man. I survived the tsunami warning. 73 today, Keith Campbell says.
Keith, what's going on, my brother? It's good to see you, man.
It was not. It was negative. Very negative today. Very cold. Hello, Richard. Richard Stumpf in the chat. Ian Guitars Shack is here.
Good to see you.
Charles 75N says Brandy Carlisle. Maybe that's who that photo was.
Brandy Carlisle.
Let's see here. And yes, I shall celebrate that in a moment. Oh, yeah. Charles is right. I just got Brandy Carlisle message to me. So, yep. Well, she didn't mention it, but you know what I mean. So, yes. I saw Bozique mention Bonamassa just released an album 2 months ago. He's doing another one so soon. He does it. Yeah, he just, it's one of those. He's like one of those guys. I think he's always got songs kind of floating around, and he's writing all the time. And then all of a sudden, hey, Charles, Studio 2 over at Sunset's available for 3 days next week. What do you think? Giddy up. Let's book some guys and let's make her happen. Makes sense to me.
Working dude, man.
Oh, let's see here. 10 degrees in Michigan. Ouch. That's cold.
It's cold. It's cold.
Yep. That's
crazy cold.
I don't like it. I don't like it at all. Let's see here. If I miss anything in the chat, folks, please just type it again. I got a rant tomorrow night, which I'm going to, I'll do the rant tonight. Why not? So we're over at the Evil Empire, a.k.a. Long McQuaid, the other day. And I'll give you the Canadian prices because it's funny. And I'm curious if they're... Obviously, it wouldn't be the same in the U.S., but I'm curious if the price points are the same. Now, here's the thing. You have a budget, Charles. You can buy one of two guitars. All right? So at $12.59 Canadian, you can buy either a Joe Bonamassa Epiphone Les Paul or a Slash Epiphone Les Paul. They've creeped up to the $12.59.95. Okay.
Are you telling me that a Epiphone Les Paul, now we're talking about a signature.
Yep.
Epiphone Les Paul is $1,300.
Better part of $1,300. Okay.
Okay.
Now the other option is, because I remembered as I was saying, so there's really three guitars. So you can get either one of those at $12.59.99, whatever, or for $12.49.95, you can get a Gibson Les Paul Special in their kind of faded white. It's just like whitewash, flat white paint, very basic. Mm-hmm. But that's an actual Gibson for $10 less.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Interesting.
Okay. I'm gonna say exactly what's on my mind. I do that from time to time.
Please.
The quality of the Epiphone build at the price range that you're talking about should be better than the low price point build of the Gibson.
Yeah.
Okay. And I own a couple of Epiphones. One of them is almost 30 years old. And I will take that Epiphone and hold it. It's a standard, and I swear it sounds as brilliant as a standard Gibson Les Paul. It just does. Yep. It's a solid mahogany. It's not, I think it's got a mahogany back. It's got a cap on it. It's neck through. It's a set neck. Well, heck, give me a second. I'll show it to you. Sure. You can do that, right? I'll be right back.
Hey, sis. Amanda is here. I have an Epiphone Les Paul as well. Let me just move that out of the way. Oh, okay, Absolute Mayhem was looking at this the other day.
It's a Honeyburst, Ben.
Nice. I've always been partial to the Honeyburst.
And it's in absolutely beautiful condition. I'll come over.
Mine is not.
Absolutely beautiful condition.
Oh, yeah.
I bought it used from a guy in a church parking lot at like 5 o'clock in the morning.
Well, that's the best time to buy.
Was that not Craigslist? I'm going to say Craigslist. What do you call that newspaper used to come out a couple of decades ago? Penny Saver? I think. Yeah. Anyway, I met him, and it was his father's. His father had passed away, and it had the toggle switch was broken, and it was in its own case, beautiful case, and it literally looked like it had never been played.
Nice.
And so, anyway,
what's up, Dave Ennis?
That guitar is absolutely stellar. It's beautiful. And so that guitar right there was, I think I paid about $400 for the guitar when I bought it. It's as fine an Epiphone standard as I'd ever played. But you can pay more for Epiphone standards because when you get them and they're signatured, number one, the build is supposed to be a little better quality. The pickup configuration can change. It can be a little different.
And that's the thing. And usually, I think with both the Slash and the Bonamassa, they both have Gibson pickups. And guarantee you, those Gibson pickups are still better than the ones that were just the uncapped, just black bob in the special, which are going to be the cheapest pickups.
Exactly.
What's up, Dave? Mr. Nesdall in the chat. Yeah, and this is
Nesdall. How you doing, David? It's good to see you.
The funny thing is, I am a headstock snob. I hate Epiphone headstocks back in the day.
I do too.
Right? But and the other thing, I hate gold tops. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I hate gold tops. And this was a beat to hell 1997 made in Korea.
That's absolutely gorgeous, dude.
Gold top. Well, no, it's more of a bronze now. It's
that's because it's been under stage lights. And now,
I've refinned it. It was gold. I took off the clear, so it was a satin gold. It looked cool.
I got you.
And then I just did a white primer over that to give it a Waddy Wachell look, and that was cool. And then I refinned it to this bronze color a couple years ago, and I'm gonna start rolling because it was so rough.
You did it on the bench with that.
I paid $100. I think I paid $175 for it.
Yeah.
And it was. Yeah. I bought off Richie, and he's like, dude, in the tuners, like a couple of the tuners were bent, but it played and sounded amazing. And I'm
thank you.
That's
the point. When they got them right, they got them right.
And this was one of the old made in Koreas. That's why it has actually Gibson on the truss rod cover because they did that at the time.
Yep.
Weighs more than most other Epiphones I've ever owned.
Yes.
And I think I've owned 2 or 3 made in Koreas and 1 or 2 made in Chinas, I want to say. And I don't know, maybe it's in our head, I don't know, but I've always preferred the made in Korea because that was the thing. It's sort of like, get early 90s Les Paul Studios, they're great guitars, blah, blah, blah.
Well, depending on
made in Korea is always carrying a $50 to $100 surplus on the used market. You buy a made in China used for $300. These were $4.
Yeah.
Just because they were that much
year and the era that we're talking. Well, we're talking.
Yeah, and this was a 57 tribute.
30 years. So around, I think it was 91, 92. it would make a difference whether you got one in China or you got one made in Korea.
Yeah, like
it matters now, depending on the price point and things of that nature. But they're making really good guitars out of Korea right now.
Mike, it was it's got definitely more of a copper look. And the sound would sound like crap through StreamYard. It doesn't really work. That's why.
Yeah, it's hard to do
no
that.
point plugging it in.
Yeah. But yeah, so back to the original question.
Mm-hmm.
Whether a guitar is a signature guitar or not, I don't care so much as long as the guitar has playability, as long as it is a well-strung guitar, intonated, holds its tune. That's first and foremost, period. Playability. And then after that, you got your things like that. I mean, if I had to make a choice between a Bonamassa and a Slash, I'd take the Slash.
Yeah.
The guitars are probably very similar. Are the necks, more or less identical? Because they do change. I mean, depending on.
I think the Bonamassa neck was a little thicker.
That would make sense. That
makes sense. And then they do a different burst, whatever. It's a different paint on the top. I don't know about you, but like me, it used to be like a lot of signature guitars were just modified stock guitars. Like think about like most of the signature Strats in the 80s and the 90s, they were all just modded Strats in some way, shape, or form.
Yep.
Same with Les Pauls. It was a different burst, different pickups, different neck shape. Right. And that's because you back in the day took your Les Paul to your guy and you said, hey, can you carve a V-neck into it? I like V-necks. And then you're all famous. And then Gibson's like, hey, we want to make your Les Paul. You're like, all right, well, it's got a V-neck. And they're like, well, we're going to charge $500 more for it. And it's going to be every other cherry burst that comes out because you just had a cherry burst that you did a V-neck with. Yep. And that's fine. Yeah. Or the other thing is the quote unquote full signature guitar where someone does a ground up thing with a manufacturer, which is something completely different. But being a tinkerer, that's the only reason I'm buying a signature guitar is like if, hey, I already put the pickups you'd want in this and I wire it up the way you'd like it. I'm like, all right, well then I'll just buy your guitar.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which really should be cheaper than actually buying the parts and doing it yourself in many ways because they're doing it mass.
I mean, right now, if so back to your original question, you're spending around 1,300 Canadian for one of those two guitars, and the other guitar was, Ben, what was that again?
It was a Gibson Les Paul Special in faded white. It was like a faded white. It was basically whitewash paint. Okay. Very rough, but it was a punk rock machine. And there's a demo of that very guitar on this channel from like 2 years ago. So I think it might be marked down because it's been in stock for a couple of years. But every time I think even knew it was only like 1,700 Canadian, and I'm just like, that's a fucking good guitar. Like, it doesn't have a fancy cap or a paint job. And, who cares? It sounds amazing. And you can play the Ramones all day long, cover it in stickers or decals. And, who cares? You bang it off something. Who cares?
Yeah. So it's player. We're talking about player grade guitar here.
It's just begging to be relicked. Honestly, just played and loved. And you can tell, like, you just look at it, it's going to have buckle rash. Oh, you can tell, like, at worst case, a brass buckle is going to leave black marks anyways. Like, it's one of those type finishes. And I used to play an Axel Badwater that had that. It was literally like whitewash paint where you could rub a coin on it and it would leave a mark. That was the finish because it was kind of a relict guitar. And I remember I put that thing on. The first time I played with it, my belt buckle just went, like I might as well use a can opener. I'm like, oh, snap. And it wasn't my guitar. It was my fiance's guitar. So I'm like,
that's brutal.
We'll just put a patch of duct tape on the back of the guitar. And I would just carve through the duct tape and I put more and more on. So it ended up being like this pillow of duct tape. But, I just carved the fuck out. And I was like, yes, but it's going to look awesome in about 5 years.
Yeah. My son Daniel has a belt buckle. It's a guitar belt buckle, about that big. And he did that to one of my guitars too. Scarred it up real good. That's okay. That's okay. That's what they're for,
Yeah. For a while, one of my bandmates used to give me hell because I would tuck in my t-shirt. Right? He's, oh no, you can't have your t-shirt tucked in. That's not rock and roll. I'm like, first of all, I got a belt buckle, so
got to show your belt buckle.
And two, if I untucked my shirt, my belt buckle would work its way through the damn shirt into the guitar anyway. So then I've just ruined a shirt and the guitar. So yeah.
There you go. There you go.
Dave says he's got a Relic Les Paul. Yes, you do, Dave. Yes, you do.
Are we talking about Dave Nesdahl?
Yeah.
He's got a Relic Les Paul. Dave, it's good to see you, brother. It's good to see you, man.
It's come by its relicness, honestly.
Yeah, man.
I was shocked at the prices in there the other day, like because I haven't been in a music store in I don't know, at least 4 months. Yeah, September was the last time I was in a music store, and the last time I was in Long and McQuaid was another month or two before that. So I was in for some sticker shock.
Wow.
Like it wasn't that long ago that even like a Slash Epiphone Les Paul was only $879. Like they've gone up.
Yeah, even at $879. Well, for a Slash model, I guess $775, $8.
Yeah, because it was like $679 new for a standard, and it was $200 extra because they're going to put some zebra pickups in it and some variant on a burst. Which
excellent. That's
that's fine.
I feel so sorry that you guys have to pay so much for those things up there.
Well, that's the conversion rate. Like it's 70 cents on the dollar, essentially. So
yeah.
Like. I think a new Gibson Les Paul standard. I think they're 3,800 Canadian now.
Wow.
I think. Hey, Lucky Seven's band.
What's going on, bro? Wow, man.
Yeah, it's not cheap. It's ridiculous. Everything is going. What hasn't gone up is obviously going up, and but you still see a few deals here and there. Like. Still bang for the buck. I was shocked, and it was ironic. I used to own actually birthday boy Mark Taft now owns it. Jackson JS11, the bottom line Jackson, right? It's got Fender fulcrum trim. Don't use it. Will not stay in tune. It's good, but the thing at the time they retailed for $199 Canadian.
Yeah,
so I'm like, yeah, whatever. It's metallic blue. It's got a cool headstock. So we're in the pawn shop the other day. And I knew they had gone up a bit, right? Because I think they went up to like $229, $239 the last time I had checked in the stores.
Okay. That's
realistic. Yeah, well, that makes sense because it's been a couple of years.
Yeah, it's realistic.
I see one. No, granted, it was in nice shape. Like, obviously, a kid got it and didn't learn how to play it and gave up on it. And they were asking $279 in the pawn shop. And I was like, well, with the command to use gear and stuff, blah, blah, blah. So I'm like, whatever. Well, then Mayhem and I go over to the music store where I bought mine from. They're back to $199 Canadian new. I'm like, nobody is going to pay an extra $80 and not get a warranty.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
It's like, man, you guys got to give your head a shake.
Yeah. Yeah, that's crazy.
Thank you, Boner Jams. He says the amount of sexiness in the chat should be illegal.
Boner Jams, what's going on, my man?
What's going on?
Good to see you, Boner.
The used market it's just insane.
Yeah, it's pretty ridiculous right now. It really is. I just got a Frankie a couple of months ago. Neil Daly. I don't know if you guys know who Neil Daly is. Daily Custom Builds.
Yeah.
And he builds guitars, build whatever you want. And he's really good at finishes. He's really good at concept guitars, things of that nature. But I've had that thing in my hands now for, a month. That's beautiful, dude.
Testarossa red next to
That's absolutely beautiful.
I'm not sure whose guitar that is, but that, of course, the guy from Switzerland sending in those photos,
Jeez, dude.
Stuff my knees hurt. Who's been putting out content? I see. Everyone should check out my knees hurts channel. Just saying.
There you go.
Tell him Ben sent you. Well, you don't need to because he just heard me. But
yeah. So So back to your original question, I would say gonna have to play the guitars and see which one is the quality. Just because it says Gibson doesn't mean it's going to be better than a quality Epiphone.
However, if you
know.
don't bond with it, you can get your money back out of a Gibson. Yeah, I bet you could probably resell it for a grand. Easy. You know,
Now
like you're not going to lose
That
much.
is actually a true thing right there, Ben. You're absolutely correct about that. You know,
I mean, the logo's worth $500 on the used market. You know what I mean? In a way, any Gibson has probably got to be worth more than $500 more than any Epiphone, barring super limited run. And the other one, like, given that they're both comparable quality as far as any damage or wear and on the used market, like, you know, an 8 out of 10 versus an 8 out of 10.
Yeah, it would be nice to have the Gibson. You know, it's always nice. I do hate that Epiphone headstock. I always have. Everybody does.
It's better than it used to be.
You're right. It is.
I remember at the last NAMM show, well, Six String Brian, he was there. We were at the Gibson party and ran into Aljon Go, and he's like, hey. I'm like, hey, good to meet you in 3 dimensions and stuff. And let's say it was an open bar, right? So he's like, hey, you got to check out the new Epiphones. I'm like, yes, I do. And then I see, like, Epiphones as far as the eye can see. And I realized after about 10 minutes, he wanted to talk about each individual one. And I didn't have time for that.
You didn't have that kind of time?
I did not have that kind of. There was people about me. There was rock stars walking around.
About the NAMM show, I was talking about with you and Brian the first time I saw you guys at a NAMM show. Yeah.
Because Brian and I met up out front of the NAMM show because it was the day before NAMM. He was there to pre-register. We pre-registered. We ran into a bunch of people there because it's right out front. But it wasn't busy.
You had so much video content for your channel.
Yeah.
It was crazy. It was crazy.
So we go up to the Gibson party and they're like, you got passes? No. And I'm like, I'll just figure something out. And I walked over and I ended up with passes for all of us. Nice. And I'm like, I need 6. And the guy's like, all right, sure, I guess. He's got long hair. He must play or something. Who knows? And so we go in there and Alshon showing, and so the headstock, he's like, yeah, what do you think? The new headstock. I'm like, you added the tone corners. And he's like, tone corners. I'm like, yep. You got the tone corners.
I like that.
He's like, it's called the Kalamazoo headstock. I'm like, I see tone corners. That's all. I'm happy. I'm happier. I'm like, it's not the same, but I'm happier.
That's killer.
And he really hates it. He's like, because you say, well, Epiphone, they're their own thing. I'm like, well, that doesn't go for the V and the Explorer. They share the same headstock as the Gibson.
Yes, they do. That's right. And they look good.
What's up, Cousin Doug?
Hey, what's going on, Doug?
Oh, we have a question for you, Charles.
I didn't do it.
Six String Brian asks, did Rat open for Crew back in the early days?
That's a really good question, Brian. The answer to that is yes. Yes, they did. On just a few occasions, a couple of occasions, actually. It would have been, hell, I didn't even get within a couple of months for you, bro. In fact, you want me to just kind of tell you a little history story on that and just tie all the knots together? Would that be okay with you guys?
I'm going to add one little caveat before you start. And I knew that there was a history with the two being in small town Ontario, approximately, let's say 85, 86 time frame. I heard about it was a photo of Rat, and the columnist had written how if you look closely, you'll see they're using Tommy Lee's old drum riser from a previous tour because they had sold some of the props and stuff to Rat for them to use, blah, 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 because they were just moving up to the next level where they got to support, hey,
that's
guys,
actually absolutely true. That's absolutely
you need
true.
infrastructure. You're the headliner, so you actually have to provide risers and lights and all this infrastructure. They're like,
a good riser does not go to waste.
No,
it does not, especially in that group.
So I knew there was some. True. I was like, "Oh, that's so cool!" Because I'm like, "That's used gear as far as I'm concerned." So, continue with your story, good sir.
Very cool. There was an overlap. Here's how it went down. Motley Crue in the middle of 1980 was known by that time, and they had a really hard vibe going on. to the point where, and it's interesting, on the Strip, there was a lot of different music going on at that time. In early 1980, you had your punk, you had your rock, you had hair metal, which was trying to be more different than rock. They were trying to separate themselves from it, and they were doing a really good job. And you also had rockabilly, and you had this stuff called new wave. New wave would be like the motels, the hotels, rockabilly, obviously Stray Cats, that kind of stuff. And then you had all kinds of music in between those genres. You had some bands that cross genres, bands like Motorhead and bands like the Plasmatics. Plasmatics are as much a punk band as they are a metal band.
Yeah. I always thought of them as a punk band.
Both genres. And that's kind of a problem with the show, because the punk side of Plasmatics is quite violent. Yeah. And the hair metal side and the punk side often clashed in some of the most violent, let's just call it full-on fist fight brawls that broke out of the Whiskey Go-Go were at those kind of shows. We used to hate that stuff there. It was really a hassle from a security standpoint. They would bring in 10, even 15 guys from West Security. And they would come in, and it was just always like walking on eggshells all the time. It was really kind of a bummer in some ways. However, back to that, Motley Crue had a big vibe. And by June of 1980, they were doing regular gigs at different clubs. The True, Gazzarri's, the Country Club. In the first part of 81, they were doing the Country Club, and they could sell the Country Club out by the middle of 1981. That's a big deal, because that's a 1,000-seat venue. One of the biggest venues in California for that kind, especially in let's just call it the LA area. Even though it's seated in, it's kind of more the valley and inland. It's still part of that whole rock scene, and you got to include the Country Club in anything you're talking about.
Well, and it's hard to book an act like Motley Crue at that time in a venue that size.
Yeah.
Elsewhere, which is basically old vaudeville style theaters,
Yes.
And they're like, we are not booked. No, we have nice upholstered furniture for people to sit on. Yeah. We are not having those young ruffians in here.
Well, I'll tell you something about Motley Crue. As absolutely brutal and in your face as those guys were, and they set the standard. They really did. They were serious. In the old days, they were it. All right. They cast a shadow of respect. And the venues they went into, their manager, they had an early manager who handled them. And he really, his name was Alan Kaufman. And he's really the key to their success, even though he doesn't get any credit for it. Especially nowadays, you barely will ever hear his name. But he kept the guys together. He kept them in a place where they could stay warm, kept them in an apartment. It was not lavish, to say the least. I don't know if you guys ever saw the movie The Dirt, but it doesn't do it justice. Let me just say that. And he kept them in a position where they could do what they needed to do and go where they needed to go. Their vibe was huge, man. And it was interesting because some of the other bouncers that I worked with, they didn't like the Crew. They didn't like the Crew. They didn't like the hair metal. They didn't like hair metal in general. And remember, their hair metal was new at that time.
Right. Yeah, I was thinking
it was new.
There's only had to be a handful of acts that you would even consider being hair metal.
That's right.
Because it was like you had Led Zeppelin had morphed into the arena rock, which was your Foreigners, your Aerosmiths, and then punk went, no, we don't want that. But then it kind of, because the end of the Sunset Strip was essentially, to me, was everybody tried to have, you got to have Robert Plant singing and Eddie Van Halen on guitar. That was the prototype for, is what it ended up being, because I think the Suits were saying, that's what you got to do, guys.
Yeah.
But the Crew, they were never quite that, right?
I would have said, instead of Robert and Eddie Van Halen, I would have said David Lee Roth and Eddie Van Halen.
Right.
Just because even though Zeppelin was huge in the early 80s, they were still massive band. They weren't really touring anymore. Their last shows were in the late 70s, primarily as Led Zeppelin. And so, they were into a whole new bag and trying to do other things at that point. I remember when the reunion, I'm skipping around a little bit, you guys, and I will get back to your question, Brian, I promise. But I'll make a note about this. I remember when, I forget if it was Farm Aid. I think it was Farm Aid when they're reporting that Zeppelin reunion they were talking about in the early 80s.
That would have been Live Aid.
Live Aid, thank you very much. And it was hugely anticipated. I mean, but when Robert started to sing and he just wasn't hitting those notes, it was horrible.
And Jimmy was out of tune.
You could feel the shriek, you could feel the force tremble. I mean, it was just horrible. And so things changed. That was a defining moment in the early 80s. Defining moment. And so it was the end of an age, even though everybody still loved the music. It's kind of an end of an age. It was a defining time. And so the Crew were huge in the early 80s. In 1980, they were huge. By the end of 1980 into early 81, they could do a solid weekend. They could do 5 shows, 2 nights on Friday, 2 on Saturday, and then 1 on Sunday, and sell them all out back to back. No problem. That's a big deal on the Sunset Strip. And in early 1980s, it was huge. Now, at the same time that was going on, the band Rat was still going through all kind of morphing. And I mean morphing. I've seen Rat with over 10 guitar players. 10. And
I read Stephen Pearcy's book. Yeah, they went through a lot in those early days.
It was ridiculous. And you know what? There's guitar players who are
Charles reporting in. The wet sanding is done. Now it needs to be buffed.
I swear that guitar's got a great vibe, man.
It does.
That thing is super cool. Got a guitar will just change my whole direction of thought, dude. I'll tell you.
Yeah, I know. I was just like,
so anyway, they're going through a lot of guitar players, and I was fortunate enough when I started working at. I met one of the waitresses and started dating her. Her name was Gwen. She had a best friend named Susie. Gwen and Susie were both waitresses at the Whiskey. They worked the main floor right in front of the stage, and just off the dance floor. And so we dated for about 2.5 to 3 years, but Susie dated Robin Crosby for the better part of a year. So I got to know him and got to hang with him in a lot of different situations. It was very fortunate, very cool. I cherish those moments.
No doubt.
The thing
it was just funny because when 2 women who are friends, they're like, we'll do couple stuff. And you're like, they hope the men will get along. And he's like, yeah, I'll get along with Robin. He's cool shit.
We actually knew each other from the get-go. We got along.
Yeah, because a lot of those guys, were they not hanging out in the venues? If they weren't playing, they were checking out their buddy's band. Like, it's like any other scene, because there was a scene.
Yeah. And so anyway, I got what it gave me privilege to was I got to hear some insider things about how he was feeling about different things that may or may not necessarily coincide with history. And so I'll share with you his thoughts. I'll be more than happy to share it with you guys. When he first started jamming, he knew Steven. He knew Warren at that time. He knew Jake. All those guys actually grew up in San Diego. Jake was what do you call it? An Army brat, I believe is the term. Yeah. And they moved around a lot. He ended up getting down in San Diego near La Jolla. That's where Robin's family was. That's where Robin grew up, went to high school. Warren was much younger. Jake would have been, so in 1981, Jake would have been at least probably 4 years older than me. So I was 20, he would have been 24. Robin was 2 years older than me. So he was 22. And Warren was 4 years younger than me. Okay. He was that child. He couldn't even get in the club. Okay. Legally. And Warren was not in the picture at that time. There was, I saw Warren on a couple of occasions, but he was not in Rat at that time. And they were just friends. Okay.
Sure.
And so I remember when it was, I want to say it was the end of 1981, and answering Brian's question, in the end of 1981, Robin wasn't happy. He was really, really, really unhappy. and he was really unhappy because he was jamming with Jakey Lee, who had joined Rat, and he wasn't happy at all. Jake wouldn't let him play any solo work. He wouldn't let him do any dual leads. He wouldn't let him do what he wanted to do, which was more or less emulate his idol, which was in Judas Priest, KK Downing. He loved KK. That was, and so I heard him. He wasn't happy with it. He was voicing his discontent to Steven, and he just flat was just not happy about it at all. So what happened is and this was within 2 months, I would call it 6 weeks, maybe 8 weeks, Jake was out of Rat. He was out of Rat. We've rolled from 81, we're rolling into 82 now. Okay, so we're talking early 82, first months of 82. And he went from being the most depressed he ever was. And I mean, he was not happy. He was not happy as a guitar player because he wasn't getting to evolve like he wanted to. It was like he was in a closet. Well, he went from being the most unhappiest guitar player I'd ever seen him to being ecstatic. He was happy. He was growing. He was improving. And he was always a wonderful guitar player. He was wonderful. I told the story once. I was watching a band. I think it was a band called Agent Orange. They were a punk band, and they were playing at Gazzari's. And we were in the dressing room of the number 2 dressing room at Gazzari's, if anyone's ever been there. And there was a guitar sitting there, and I was playing it. I was strumming some chords, and I didn't learn how to play guitar until a few years ago. And so I was real proud of myself because I was pulling off, like a C and an A and a G chord real clear. And Robin grabbed the guitar from me, and he just flawlessly pulled off Carry On My Wayward Son by Kansas, and he hands it back to me, and he kind of laughed a little bit. And I looked at him, I said, geez, he goes, that's how it's done, and I'll never forget that. I'll never forget it. Well, he got better. He was a good guitar player then, but a couple of years later, he was on fire.
Yep.
Here's how it went down.
I want to welcome all these people joining. We got like 80 plus people watching.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
And guys, I might have my month and maybe the year placement on this off. 4 to 6 months
you
possible.
Survived. So that's enough that you can talk about this and you're coherent. You don't sound like Joe Walsh. No offense to Uncle Joe.
We love Uncle Joe, man. He taught me how to tune a guitar.
He's a survivor.
But anyway,
thanks, Dave.
In the beginning, Rat and Motley Crue were just, the boys were all friends,
Mm-hmm.
They all knew each other. There was a real big camaraderie, and there was a real big
would you call them buddy bands? Like, buddy bands where, hey,
Motley Crue are what you consider buddy bands.
Something breaks, like if Nikki's bass amp blew up, they're like, hey, we got a show tonight. Can I borrow? Yeah, and vice versa.
Well, to be honest, it wasn't until all of them knew each other, but they didn't have quite the camaraderie until the end of 81, the beginning of 82.
Okay.
That's and it was really just before the MTV era.
Mm-hmm.
There's some videos. There's a couple of Rat videos where some Motley Crue members come in and do some cameos. Tommy dressed like a cop. There's several videos like that. They were very friendly, and they grew up in the same town. They went to a lot of the same parties. And they were part of the same group of people. Anyway, in the beginning, Rat would do their own thing because they were popular, but they weren't the same band that you guys know. There was no Juan, the bass player, wasn't there. I can't remember all their names. And I'm sorry, you guys. I'd get it wrong if I tried to. But the early music of Rat, especially in what I would call early 1981, a lot of the vibe of the music sounded like, that song Lack of Communication? that
Oh
whole
yeah.
rhythm of the song. They had that down. That sound was in the
I
music.
had that song stuck in my head last week, Charles.
Yeah,
And I was like, where
yeah.
did that come? Like, I had not literally, I probably hadn't heard it since I played it on a cassette, because it's
Yeah.
not played on any radio station or anything. And then I just had to bring it up, and I'm like, oh dear Lord, what a groove!
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's classic. That rhythm is Robin Crosby at his finest in that song. I mean, he was exactly what Warren needed to shine, and he was exactly what Warren needed for him to evolve as a guitar player. The difference in his guitar playing, and I mean, I'm not making light of this, between the middle of 1980 and the middle of 1982, he was twice as good a guitar player as he was in that 2-year span.
It's
He was,
like,
you know,
you can correct me if I'm wrong, but like Warren has always come across as like no ego. And if Robin said, "Hey, can I do some more? Like, can we do some dual lead work?" He's like, "Yeah, sure, man." Or, "Hey, can I take the lead on this song? Because I only do 1 and 4." Type thing. And be like, "Yeah, fill your boots." Like, let's do it. How about I'll play on? How about I harmonize you? And he'd be like, "Shit, okay." Because that's kind of deal. Warren almost had that surfer, just laid backness.
You know what his strong thing that I remember from him the most is that when he was 16 years old, lying and saying he was 17,
right?
I literally, he carried himself like he was 25 years old.
Right.
Okay, he had a persona about him, and he was set and driven to accomplish a goal, which was to play rock guitar in a rock band and be successful. But they all knew each other, and at the beginning, up into I would say the beginning of 1981 was before Rat and Motley Crue actually did their first show at the Whiskey together on the same bill.
Right.
Was not with Warren, was not with Juan, but it was good, and it had a super killer vibe. Motley Crue was on fire, literally on fire. Mm-hmm. I remember one. I'll tell this story again. I love this. Is one of my favorite stories, and it even includes my father. Rat is actually doing a headline. Motley Crue was not on the show; they were there at the show. Okay,
hanging out because it's part of the scene. Support the scene, Charles. Support the scene.
Just like buddies, they got along. Dave was there. Dave was. This would have been the end of 1980. No, I'm so sorry. The end of 1981. Halen had just come off tour. The end of this would have been the end of October, maybe the middle of November, just before Christmas time. And so Rat is playing a show, and so Tommy is there. He still has his original girlfriend from high school.
Right.
Her name is Debbie. Vince is there. He's got his original girlfriend, Beth. If you girls happen to hear this, I love you. You guys are awesome. And I'm dating Gwen, and Robin's dating Susie. Now there's an after party after the show. Okay, so we're all going to go to the Rat after party. I hand my car keys to Gwen, and I've got to go down to the office and clock out because I was working. I come back to the car, and Tommy is standing there with his girlfriend, and his arms are folded, and he's got this just look of absolute, I can't believe it on his face, right? And I'm looking, and I could see Gwen, and she's crying. And I said, "What's up, sweetie?" And she holds my keys up, and my BMW key has been twisted off. She put it in upside down and turned it the wrong direction and twisted it off in the lock of the ignition. Okay. So anyway, Tommy and his girlfriend were supposed to go with me, and Vincent and Beth were going with Nikki and Lita Ford. And Nikki and Lita Ford were dating in 1981, by the way, guys. I point that out. They dated for about a year, off and on. Anyway, so I can't go. I'm immediately, I've got to take care of the car and blah, blah, blah. My responsibility is I got to have my ride. It's my beautiful ride. My BMW is down, right? So I go back into the office. I say goodnight to everybody. Charlie actually ends up, I think, I was going to say something else about it, but I'll forget about that. Anyway, Gwen ends up taking off and goes off with them. So I call my dad. Now, remember, guys, I'm 20 years old, right? I call my dad. I said, Dad, I need your help. I said, I need a toolbox. I didn't have anything I needed, and the club was going to close. And it's probably by this time, it's close to 1:30 in the morning. And so I call my father, and he says, yeah, I'll come out there. Mr. Straight-Laced, you guys, never been to the Sunset. Coming to the Sunset Strip at 3 o'clock in the morning from my father was never going to happen, but he's doing it. Okay. So anyway, long story. I'll speed it up a little bit. I end up taking my whole lock apart.
See you, Dave.
And the other thing, Dave leaving. Good night, Dave. It's good to see you, brother. And I get the ignition apart. My dad's there with me, and so it's getting to be about 5:30 in the morning, and just barely, the sun's it's starting to get a little bit light, just barely. And it was a Sunday morning on Sunset Boulevard. It's just nothing going on, just dead. And all of a sudden, out of my left ear, I hear this voice, and I look over to my left, and there's this big herd of people coming up Clark Street by the Whiskey, walking towards us. I'm in the back parking lot of the club. It's right behind there. And so my dad looks over, and he gets really scared because, we got street thugs coming up on us on Sunset Boulevard. He's flipping. He was out of his element, right?
Sure.
So they come and they crowd around the car. And anyway, it's Tommy Lee, Lita Ford, David Lee Roth, Nikki Sixx, and like 8 to 12, maybe more of their entourage in this huge herd. And Tommy leans in to my dad, and I don't know if you know what Tommy used to look like, but it was all Tommy, right? And my dad is sitting there with the most unbelievably shocked look on his face.
Skin bones in hair.
Tommy leans in and he shakes his hand and he says, Mr. Greene, it's a pleasure to meet you. And he says some nice pleasantries to my dad, and my dad shakes his hand, and my dad's looking at this vista of rock stars. And so anyway, they say goodbye to me. They asked me about my car, and I said, I'm good, and blah, blah. How was the party? Party was great. They head up to the hill to the crew's apartment. And my dad looks at me and he says, who were those people? I said, Dad, you wouldn't believe me if I even told you, And he says, well, no, who? I said, those are rock stars, Dad. Just like that. And he said, really? I said, you have no idea who you just met. And so anyway, but yeah, here's what went down with me. About the end of 1981, I was getting to the point where I was really enjoying myself, but I was working in a very violent environment. Violent. And so what was going on is I was thinking about the future. I was actually getting very serious with Gwen. And also then from 81 to the end of 82, I'm still, I'm involved, but not as much, I think March or April of 82 was the last time I worked regular at the Whiskey A Go-Go. How it went down was this. I was at my, I still live with my mom and dad in their house. And one afternoon, the phone rang, and it was a friend of my father's. He was his title was Deputy Fire Chief for the City of El Segundo Fire Department. Right. And I'm a 20-year-old kid, barely 21. And in fact, I wasn't even 21 yet. I was almost 21. I didn't turn 21 till November of that year. And he puts it in my ear. He says, I've known your dad a long time. He says, we're hiring. Would you be interested in becoming a firefighter? And I got to tell you guys, I jumped on it. I just jumped on it. I thought it would be really cool. At first I really did enjoy it. But after a couple of years of doing that, I I got kind of tired of it, to be honest. It got a little boring. I guess depends where you are, but it depends, it's something you really got to make a commitment to for life. And I got to the point where I was just feeling, I wanted something else. And so anyway, I got into contracting, and by the end of 1990, I actually picked up and moved to Honolulu, Hawaii, and started contracting. And I've been doing it ever since. It's funny how things change, and different paths come up. But a lot of the guys I worked with in Hollywood, they were getting hurt. I mean, they were getting hurt. They were going to the hospital. They were getting cut. They were getting, I've been hit in the throat with a full bottle of Michelob thrown from the other side of Sunset Boulevard. Couldn't talk for like 3 days. That was the kind of things that I had to deal with.
Sure.
While I was enjoying that really cool job I had, because it was the greatest job I ever
had.
had.
Unless you could have the chance to move up into management or something like that.
No.
By the time you're 23, 24, that's going to start feeling pretty old scene.
No, you don't. That's not
exactly.
It's not a life goal. Now, I did have the opportunity. I was still very friendly with, I made a lot of friends when I was in Hollywood, lots of friends. I had an opportunity to go to Japan. I could have gone on the road with Motley Crue. Chose not to do it.
I guess that would be the way to kind of parlay that job in a way, is to become security or something.
What was going to be my new wife. And to be honest, I understand that world from being inside of it a little bit. And once they got snatched up by that new record company, they were put into a mode of, well, here, you guys will know what I'm talking about. Here's how it works. When they were up and coming and Alan Kaufman was controlling them, they were making the company a lot of money, okay? But they weren't living very good, and they were very disappointed. And they were very verbal about it. Very, very, very verbal about it. And I could tell something was going to implode. Now, when they got, I believe it was Elektra who actually snatched them up. And when they got signed, at the signing party, which is the first time I met Brad and Chris, the new book Eruption, they're at that signing party. And the management put kind of an umbrella over them and surrounded them and elevated them to a different level. At that point, the guys, talking about the guys in the band, they got the vibe that they were going to be successful to some point. They were selling out everything that they went to do. They sold out Perkins Palace. That was 2,500 people. So they'd already elevated at that point. By the end of 81, coming into 82, they could sell out the Country Club, and then now they're selling out Perkins Palace.
Right.
Then they did a show at the Santa Monica Civic. That's a funny story. So the guys, the new management managed to get 2 Top Fuel funny cars on stage.
Oh, wow.
At the Santa Monica Civic.
Nice.
As props. It's the first time that they used that stuff called liquid flame, where they lit Nikki's legs on fire with the flaming sword. That's the first time they ever did it. It's the first time they ever cut a mannequin's head off.
Unbelievable.
They actually did it once at the Whiskey before the show they did before the Whiskey, then they did it at Santa Monica Civic. So they did it at the Whiskey before they did Santa Monica, but he used the chainsaw on the mannequin head once at the Whiskey before. I don't want to get that wrong. But that was 3,500 people. They sold that out. So the boys had some hard decisions to make, and they were put under the wing of the company. They had a new management that was taking care of them, and I was not really going to be part of it. Even Stick and Barry, who are the family. These guys are family. We're talking about Mick Mars' first cousin. And they're like brothers. They were out, it was going to be a worldwide deal. Motley Crue had to hit the big time, and so you know, it's interesting how things turn out, you know, and how the 80s turned out. Three of the, you know, what I think the thing about it is what I did get to see off of from 1980 to 89, I got to see Motley Crue, Rat, Warrant, Great White, Faster Pussycat, LA Guns, and another handful of really killer bands just kick the shit out of the Sunset Strip. And it was priceless. It's not just Sunset Strip, it's LA in general. You say the Strip, you can't leave out. There's several other clubs. They'd sell Madame Wong's out. They could do Madame Wong's and sell the Wong's out. A lot of clubs that they played aren't there anymore. You know, Gazzari's is gone now. It's gone. I can't even fathom that. I thought the place was timeless, going to be there forever, you know, but that's not the case, unfortunately. Anyway, I hope I answered Brian's question in a real roundabout way.
It's all good. It's all good in a roundabout way, but quite the story. Just, you know, Charles just talking about rock stars, Amanda. That's what you missed. That's all.
Oh, it's Amanda in the chat. It's good to see you.
She was here, and then she had to leave, and then she's back. Which means
it's good to see you.
Put Sam to bed. Yeah, we got Magic Man's here. We still got 79 people watching. Some people have been dipping in, dipping out over the course of the answer to the question, which is
very cool.
Quite good. Brian says thanks. Yep. You answered it, I guess.
You got it, Brian. You got it, my man. I got to see, you know, unfortunately, when I was there, you know, Randy Rhoads passed away when I was at the club, and it devastated the Sunset Strip.
Scott had just asked if you ever got a chance to see Randy with Quiet Riot.
No, they were actually, they played, there was one time when they played the Roxy, and I was working at the Whiskey, and I couldn't see the show because they were playing down the street. That happened on a couple of occasions with a couple of different bands. But I did get to meet Randy on several occasions. He was a fixture on the Sunset Strip. My girlfriend knew him for probably 5 to 7 years from when he was very young. But in fact, both my girlfriend, Gwen and Susie, they knew him very well. When he passed away, they died. They cried for a week. I mean, it was, you know, it sucked. It sucked.
Sure.
And it was really, you know, it was tough going through those kind of things, but at the same time, it just goes to show you how tight the people were there. We had a very tight group that we ran with, and there were certain people that kept it together. You know, the big boss of all that was Mario Maglione. He owned the Roxy. He was a major owner of the Roxy, the Rainbow Club, and the Whiskey A Go-Go.
Okay.
And he had a nephew named Louis, and Louis was a bartender. It's funny, people thought Louis the bartender. They didn't realize that he was the heir to it all. And getting to interact with Mario and Louis, and getting to hear them tell about the history of the clubs and all the
Speaking
things
of which, that brings up Mark, the birthday boy Mark Taft, had asked earlier if you had heard any stories regarding the Doors at the Whiskey.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, one time Mario was giving me a tour, and I listened to every word that man said. It was unbelievable to spend time with that man, because he was like a walking encyclopedia of rock history. He knew everybody. When Lita Ford came off tour, the very first thing she did was give Mario a hug and a kiss. Okay, he knew everybody. And Ben, I lost damn track, man. What was that? What was the question he asked was
anything regarding the Doors?
Yes. So he's taking me upstairs one night, and it was one of the very first times I met him. And he walks into a dressing room. I'm just following him. He's talking, and I'm just kind of at his heels, and I'm listening to every word he's saying. And he walks up into the main number 2 dressing room at the top of the stairs at the Whiskey, and he walks up to the wall. It's just a wall, and it's got graffiti written all over it. And he points to it, and he goes, "You know, Charlie, call me Charlie." He said, behind that, he says, there's poems from Jim Morrison, Janis Joplin. Who else was it? Damn. You guys don't know him. Shit, I can't think of his name. I'm so sorry.
Hey, George.
Grace Slick from Jefferson Starship. She wrote stuff there. I'm trying to think of somebody else. Mama Cass Elliott. Because you see, the Whiskey A Go-Go was it's been around a long time. It's been around for, it was at that time, it's been around for a couple of decades. And so back in the 60s, especially in the early 60s, they had, it was a go. I mean, that's where the go-go comes from. It was a go-go bar, essentially. And they had these cages, and the girls would get in there and the girls would dance in the cages. And that was the go-go aspect of the club. It actually back in the 60s had it, and it didn't have a seedy vibe at all. It had a very classy vibe, considering it was on the Strip, which was a very edgy place. And he said, this is what Mario told me. He told me that he showed me the walls, and he said that he had plywooded over and then sheetrocked over plywood, and he had time capsules in the walls of the Whiskey A Go-Go. So, and time capsules like that, I've watched David Lee Roth and several rockers with El Marcos write all kinds of stuff on the walls backstage. They didn't really want you writing on the walls in the downstairs area where the band played, but the back hallway to the bathroom and upstairs on the walls and everything was kind of encouraged, to be honest.
So you wonder at what point do they put another layer of plywood over that, and then,
they very seldom would paint over anything.
Yeah.
There's layers,
seal that layer,
layers.
seal the 80s and the 90s up till now or whatever.
Now,
and then
what I'm talking about is stuff that was in the early 80s. They have remodeled the club a couple of times. They added an upper mezzanine. And I actually kept in touch with Louis. I called him about every 10 years up until around 13 years ago or so. I haven't spoke to him, and it's been about maybe 15 years now since the last time I called him. But every time I call, he remembers me. He always remembers me, and we shoot the shit for a little while. Sure. And if I always laugh about it, and it's in the back of my mind, but if I ever get a chance to go see the crew again at the Whiskey A Go-Go, I'm going to call that in and ask a favor,
Yeah.
So that's going to happen.
Can you squeeze me? I'll be your bar back for one more night.
Yeah, just, I'd like to slide in just get me in the club, guys. And they'll do it. They'll do it. It's good to have friends,
Nice. Aaron from Elvis Band says, so he's like, holy crap, Charles, when's the book coming out? This guy's awesome.
Oh man, look, the guy you guys want to have a book from is Paul Marshall. All right. And Paul Marshall has more than one book in him. And he's the guy. I really appreciate what you're saying, brother. I got some great stories. A lot of the stories I have, I was telling Ben, we were talking about it backstage. I can't tell them to you guys. They're way either too personal to the people I'm telling them about. And, I'm not going to do that to them. And the other time, it's not the kind of stuff we talk about on the show. I mean, the 80s I had some dark things going on in the 80s, and it was devastating to some people. It took their lives, So that being said, we don't go there,
Holly says you should give Louis a call, just to catch up.
Yeah, Louis is awesome.
Will Varela mentions Will, who said, I'm just dipping in to say hello, and then he was going to catch the replay, but he's still here. Awesome. What's up, buddy? Cool. He said, there's rumor that the whiskey is haunted. Can you speak to that at all?
Well, I spent the night there a couple of times. When I first started working there, I befriended a couple of the bouncers, Charlie and Randy, and they'd been there. They were what you considered old timers. They worked for Mario for a while, and so they had some years under their belt. And they would tell me stories like that. And the Viper Room is probably the most haunted club on the Strip, I would dare say.
Right,
and that's documented. It's crazy. How many sightings?
Possibly the Comedy Store.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Actually, the Gus at the Comedy Store is who I'm actually talking about now. I'm so sorry, Ben. The
Yeah.
Viper Room is, but the Comedy Store has Gus, and Gus was actually a mob hit that occurred there, and there have been dozens of sightings over the years. But that being said, when I first started working at the Whiskey, there was a manager there named Paul Dancer, and he's the guy who actually hired me to work at the Whiskey full time. And Motley Crue was playing there on a sold out weekend, and things were a lot laxer when he was the manager. And so I ended up staying late one night at the club, and to the tune of 3:34 in the morning, Motley Crue was playing that weekend. So I've slept on the stage at the Whiskey A Go right in front of Tommy Lee's drum set over a couple of day weekend. Yeah, and that's really cool. However,
And was that just to stay there, or is that for security?
No, that's just because I was at the club and there was a bunch of people there, and we just didn't leave because we had to be back, and
Well,
we were just staying.
I get it.
We were just hanging out, and that actually came to an end when Paul ended up leaving. They brought another manager in, and things changed. But hey, you asked, I share it.
Sure.
But while I was there,
Yeah, everything was much more lax back in the day when, like say when a band would play at a bar, if you're closing down the bar, then generally the band quite often would have call it an after party, because it's like the band plus another half dozen people,
yeah.
you sit around, you have a few pops just there.
Yeah.
And then next thing you know, it's like, well, Christ, like the cleaning crew's coming in an hour type thing.
Well, the rules were bent here and there for different things sometimes, but
not saying they still are on occasion, but it happens.
Well, while I was there, I heard all kinds of weird noises and things from inside the building, but I was with other people. I wasn't by myself. It's not like I was all by my lonesome laying there.
Sure.
There was 8 to 10 other people there, but I never saw anything. I heard some stories, and right next door to the Whiskey is actually a very old, what used to be a speakeasy back in the late 50s. And it was a bar, essentially. And it's always been one. It's got a beautiful, if it's supposedly, the rumor at the time was it was owned by a couple of movie producers. And Mario and Louis let one of the waitresses who had a cover band doing Stones tunes practice in there. So one night, probably every couple of weeks after the Whiskey would close, we'd go next door and we'd watch them, until the wee hours of the morning, and they'd play Stones tunes. They were like, is it all chicks, all girls? They were really good, by the way. They were really great. And they were trying to get good enough to where they could submit a tape and come in on a cover band night and play the Whiskey, which actually happened. Sure. But being next door there, that's the last time I saw John Belushi alive, was in that little bar right there. It was weird. The night before, he was in Hollywood, and when I had my post at the backstage, as I would look through the doorway at the stage, to my left, the stairs went down to a door that opened onto Clark Street, and then to my right, they would go up to the upstairs dressing rooms. And you never knew who was going to knock on that door. It'd blow your mind. You would be on the other side of it sometimes.
Because it's not the obvious entrance by any means.
No, the list of people that I saw on the other side of that door is endless. It's endless. But one time I opened the door, and John Belushi's standing there, and he's got a buddy with him. Guy looked like some kind of a movie guy, an executive or something of that nature. They were two oddballs. John was he was a little wasted, and he was just really outgoing. He was really friendly, and he asked if he could get backstage and hang out. Absolutely, John, no problem. And
no band would turn down hanging out with John anyway.
Well, that's kind of how it was. It was interesting because there was a stand.
You were the gatekeeper of the hang, Charles. You're like, you know what? You're cool. Yeah. Come on in.
We had there was a manager named Red Keller. He was actually an actor. You can see this guy. There's a movie called American Hot Wax. It's directed by a guy named Floyd Matrix. and it was in a 78, I think is when it came out. The movie did, maybe 79, but it's a really great movie. And it had a lot of characters that you'll know. It's kind of a B movie, but it's got a lot of characters from Hollywood that you guys would know. And especially for getting around my age, you'd really enjoy it. But Red he played a manager of a club in the movie. He played essentially the role that he was living at the Whiskey when he was the manager. And he was kind of a staunch manager. There was no BS around him. He changed the whole vibe almost in a negative way. It was better to hang out when Paul Dancer was acting as manager. But the club ran a little smoother when Red was in the helm, so to speak. But I'm sorry, I'm just jumping around you guys, trying to tell you guys all the stories.
It's all good.
I lost track again. There was some specific point I was going
this
for.
place next door. So what was it, like a business next door with a bar in the back?
Anyway,
or was it a bar?
John Belushi. So anyway, he hangs out there for a couple of hours. He comes back by me and he says goodbye, shakes my hand. Real nice guy. And so at the end of the night, we end up doing our thing where we go next door. Okay. And now it's like 3 o'clock in the morning by this time, and maybe even 3:30. It was morning by this. It was early morning. Me and this guy Mike are coming out of there, and we're the last two to leave at that point. And he's locking the door, and it was a real eerie night on Sunset Boulevard. See, it's always noisy in the city, right? But at 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, you almost get these moments of absolute silence on the strip. Right. And on this particular morning, it was dead silent. And I heard this kind of whooshing noise. As I was standing, I came out of the club and I had my back to the door, and Mike was locking the lock. And this limousine came from what would be west and came down Sunset, just kind of came over that rise by the Roxy and came rolling down real slow. And I'm just looking at it. And it pulls up right in front of me on the other, it's on the other side of the street, right? And John Belushi jumps out. And he walks towards me, and I'm standing there, and Mike is still got his back. I've got my back to him. He's still locking the door. He's messing with the lock. And John walks up to me and he asks me, he says, "Hey, pal, can I get a..." And I looked at him. I said, Mike, I said, "Dude, can we get this man a beer?" And Mike was just like, "Dude," he says, we're out of beer. We're out of beer, I think is what he said. Now, Mike was kind of my superior at that time. And I didn't argue with him. I didn't say anything because there was some beer in that place. We could have given him a cold beer. He might still be alive if we could have. So that being said, he turned around. He shook my hand again, just as polite as could be, and got back in that limo and took off down Sunset. The following evening, he passed away. So, Sunset Boulevard, unfortunately,
So what is the super secret location next door to the Whiskey? Like, is it a store in the front, bar in the back? Like,
you can Google map it right now and it'll look like first of all, it's a spectacular building. The actual building itself is around 20 feet wide, and it's three stories high. So you go in and it's very narrow and long. Right. And it goes up, and there's just nothing but one bar that goes about 30 feet long. And all that
like half the bars they played in around here.
In the 50s and 60s, all that place was used for was for parties. It wasn't like a bar that was
so open. It's a bar that was never open to the public.
Nope. It was a private lounge, I guess would be what the term would be.
Right.
And yeah, it was kind of nice. We got to hang out there, and cool. But I never saw anything there like, doors moving or the wind blowing this or any of that. A lot of creaking and that, but it's an old structure. But yeah, that's the only ghost things I know of are the Viper Room has one and the Comedy Store has one. And they say that the Rainbow Club has one too, a couple. A couple of the guys who, it's funny, if you ever watch the movie Up in Smoke with Cheech and Chong, the original, all of the Mexican guys who play in the band are actually the kitchen staff from the Roxy and the Rainbow. That's who those guys are. That's who they are. And they're really great guys, man. They're all family, and they've been there. They had been there at that time. They used to make me dinner and stuff. When I'd go as an employee, I would always, you know, if I was working, sometimes I'd work at the Rainbow. Sometimes I'd work at the Roxy. Sometimes Mario would have a party in the back parking lot of the Roxy, and we would just do like parking lot, deal with the crowd and stuff. And then primarily I worked down at the Whiskey, and that was my main thing for a while. Yeah. It was really cool, guys. It was a lot of fun, very dangerous. It didn't last for long, a couple of years. I did security for West Security for about 4 years, and I worked at the Whiskey A Go-Go for under 2 years. Probably, I would say maybe 3 months longer than a year and a half. So not even 2 years at that club specifically. But I was fortunate enough to work for West Security, and they all of the Southern California, literally. And so I would go down to San Diego. I'm an LA kid. I was born and raised in the South Bay. So I would take a couple-hour drive down south, sometimes work Jack Murphy Stadium for a big concerts.
Mm-hmm.
I got to work the US Festival. I did 2 of the 3 days at the US Festival. That was absolute nightmare, horrible. Best music, some of the best music I've ever heard.
Right.
It wasn't the band's fault that it was US Festival.
Crappy experience, but it had an amazing soundtrack.
Experience. It was 114 degrees. People were dropping like flies.
What's up, Michael B?
And hey, Michael, what's going on, bro? And but the bands were kicking it off. It was awesome. And I'll give a shout out to our Canadian friends, Mr. Ben. Mm-hmm. When Triumph hit the stage, that was a breath of Canadian awesomeness. It stood out like a sore thumb. I saw 4 bands come up before them that were nothing but denim and leather, hardcore denim and leather. Some of the 4 of the baddest ass bands that there were at the time. And they all, without a hit, each band was stellar. They played perfect sets. It was a perfect day from the front of that stage and behind the stage. Every band was giving everything they had perfectly. And so as the sun was just getting to the point where there was some relief on the crowd, because even though the crowd was loving it, we're talking about from the stage, when you looked off that stage, you saw a 1/4 mile wide wall of people, a mile long. Think about it. That's more than 350,000 people. I actually heard a group of sheriffs in a tent where I was say that there was 500,000 people at that show. All right. And it was crazy. It was 114, 15 degrees. People were dropping like flies. When the event started, I squatted down at an entry gate with like 5 trash cans next to me. And my goal was not to remove contraband. My goal was to make sure that people couldn't bring in coolers in their food. They wouldn't let them bring in their own food.
Right.
And so people were throwing their food away to not lose their place. I mean, when you turned your back and looked behind you, you saw, 100,000 people. It was ridiculous.
Yeah.
And that went on. So I patted down probably 30, 40, even maybe 50,000 people over a 2-day period, taking away their food. And so then they're packing that valley full of people, and people were dropping like flies, you guys. It was horrible. And then they were heaving towards the stage, and people were getting literally crushed. The medical tents were overflowing, but the music was stellar. The music was absolutely wonderful. And when Triumph actually hit that stage, and they opened with Allied Forces. And there was only a few times, I said it before, there was only a few times that day when the crowd, you noticed it. And the first time I noticed it was Motley Crue played PC or Action, one of their original songs. And the whole crowd, like when you see 300,000 or 400,000 people doing this at one time, it's something. And so that occurred then, but I saw it again when Triumph hit the stage, and it was start to finish almost their entire set. It was unbelievable. And when I left that venue, now I finished that night seeing Van Halen do one of the best Van Halen shows they have ever done, period. And going home literally singing Triumph songs in my head. Yeah, that's how it was going down. So little shout out, man. Triumph was a serious band. They absolutely kicked ass.
Yeah.
Brutally.
Great group of guys, great group of musicians.
And right after they leave the stage, here comes the Scorpions, man. It was badass, dude. And then Van Halen. It was killer. Absolutely killer.
Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome. We still got quite the crowd in here. We still got over 80 people watching here. This is awesome.
Hey, I hope I'm not boring you guys.
No, and it's like we're not getting like really any questions. It's just everyone's like, "Holy crap! I love these stories." I'm getting a lot of comments. So it's just like apparently we just have like 80 people watching as opposed to hanging with us. They're just we're hanging out in a couple of chairs, and they're just apparently I don't know. We borrowed the Hysteria tour stage, and we're just in the round, and we're slowly rotating, just the two of us hanging out.
That was a really good tour, by the way. Hysteria was great.
Yeah,
it was killer.
The tour that wouldn't end, it was it like between them and then like Metallica with the Black Album, those two albums, they both had slow takeoff because we were talking off air about Hysteria. It's to the point where the tour because we got to hit all these towns because they hit playing at, say, the medium-sized venues. Mm-hmm. And now, we went from playing the hockey arenas. Now they want us to play the baseball and football stadiums.
Yeah.
The next time through.
Yeah.
Because they could tour that same album for, it was like 2-3 years. And so, when you have 6+ singles coming out every few months, that allows you to hit a lot of markets more than once.
This is true.
Will was asking, ever do any work or see anything at the Hollywood Bowl?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I've seen several bands at the Hollywood Bowl, not necessarily hard rock bands. I used to work the Hollywood Bowl for West Security. I've seen a lot of just mainstream music. Cyndi Lauper, bands like that. As far as rock bands at the Hollywood Bowl.
Hey, Thomas, thanks very much. He says, great stories, Charles, Ben, show.
Thomas, you rock, Mr. Thomas.
Awesome.
I'm trying to think of, in the 80s at the Hollywood Bowl, who I saw as far as music we listened to. And see, the thing about it is the Hollywood Bowl, Van Halen played the Hollywood Bowl, all right? One of the last show they did, I believe, was at the Hollywood Bowl. Rest in peace, Eddie Van Halen. And but in the 80s, there weren't a lot of rock bands playing the Hollywood Bowl. Rock bands went to Irvine Meadows Amphitheater. Okay, that's where you would see Def Leppard. That's where you would see any rock band. You could see Styx at the Irvine Meadows Amphitheater. And that was also a venue that West would work. So, in the 80s, it was all Irvine, my man, more than the Hollywood Bowl. You would see Celine Dion. You see Chuck Mangione at that time at the Hollywood Bowl. Stanley Clarke, Chick Corea.
My cousin's high school graduation was at the Hollywood Bowl.
Well, you'd see.
They used it for all kinds of purposes.
Jose Feliciano. Remember him from the old days? He did the Hollywood Bowl. I think maybe I saw the Beach Boys at the Hollywood Bowl. Maybe I
can see the Beach Boys playing. Really I was thinking in my head, because I was thinking, what rock band in the 80s? But Huey Lewis and the News could play the Hollywood Bowl.
Yeah, they could. And they're actually really good in concert. But the concert I did with them was 2 nights, and that was at the Long Beach Arena in Long Beach, California.
Nice.
In the 80s. That was over 2 tours.
I was always a big fan of them.
Yeah, I've seen them a couple of times in Cali. Yeah. Never saw Eddie Van Halen come into the whiskey. I never saw him in public. Missed him at least 3 times. He came in a couple of times to meet Steve Rosen, and Steve would always meet him downstairs in a booth Steve knew everybody. He knew the waitresses. He'd come down, he'd be in a booth. Eddie would come in. They'd hang for a couple of minutes and leave. And I would hear that I missed him, after the fact.
Sure.
I was fortunate enough to meet Michael Anthony. I got a cool story I'll tell you guys. Some of you guys have heard this one, but a lot of you guys in the chat hadn't. And this is a funny story about Michael Anthony's little brother. He has a little brother named Stefan, and he's not little anymore, but in 1980, at the end of 1980, 1981, the end of 1981, I show up to the club one evening, and it's like a Tuesday or a Thursday night. It was a rock and roll showcase evening, so they'd have 3 or 4 bands typically play. And I get to the club early, and I come walking in the side door, and I'm walking up the stairs, and I look at the top of the stairs, and I see this kid. And I mean kid. This kid looked like he was 14. Okay, he looked really young. All right. And he's in a one-piece spandex suit, black with yellow stripes. Right? Very Van Halen-ish, right? Looked like a bumblebee is what he looked like. And he's stretching, and he's doing like these gymnastic stretches and stuff. And he's really fit, looked like a gymnast. And he goes, "Hey, are you Chuck?" And I said, yeah, I'm Chuck. And he says, "Well, my name's Stefan." He says, "They told me that I could get up with you. My band's playing here tonight, and I'm really, really excited." And I look at this kid, and I'm thinking, okay, this is not normal. I mean, this kid was really excited, right? Then he starts admitting to me things that he really didn't need to, like the fact that he was underage, telling me that this was only the second gig his band had ever played. I believe the first gig was a Moose Lodge in the Valley. Wow. A few weeks before that. And he's like telling me his whole thing, and he's just really excited, right?
Apparently, Keith thinks you need your own podcast.
Oh, and Keith, you're awesome, Keith.
Ollie agrees.
Oh, no. I like hanging with you guys. You guys keep the podcast.
Yeah.
And I'll just...
and we already, and we'll mention it here. Apparently, Magic Man says the only person that could top you would be Jay Leonard J, and he's just kidding about that. And Jay Leonard J's been on the show. He's an alumni. A bunch of people loving this. Will Varela says he thinks this is the best show of the year so far.
Oh my goodness, Will.
And then some, and he wants a part 2. So yes, there will be a part 2. We're just scratching the surface, folks.
Wow. Ben, where was I, brother? Where was I just now?
Michael Anthony's brother.
So he's really just flipping out. But the whole time he's telling me this stuff, he doesn't stop stretching. He's stretching, doing these power stretches. Like, you ever see the guys who are into karate, and they take their foot and they throw it up on the wall, and then they like look at their foot. Yeah. That's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. Okay. And
it sounds like a Joe Piscopo SNL skit.
Dude, this kid was really nice. He was personable. He was really nice. He gave off this really like honest vibe, and like he was in the wrong place. And I didn't know anything about his band. I didn't know nothing. But so anyway, he says to me, and then in this passing just moment, he mentions this little thing. He goes, "Oh, by the way," he goes, "Yeah, Michael Anthony's my older brother." And I said, "Excuse me?" And I said, "What was that?" He said, "Michael Anthony's my little brother." And he looks at me and he goes, with this big grin, he goes, "I want to be David Lee Roth so bad I can taste it." Just like that. And I looked this kid up and down, and I said, "Michael Anthony's your older brother?" And then he goes, "Yeah, and he's going to be here in just a little bit and, give us a wishing off for our show." I said, "Michael Anthony's going to be here in a little bit." And the kid, I'm a fan. They were the biggest band in the world. This kid had no idea what a Van Halen fan he was talking to. He had no idea. And so I said, "So Stefan, when's Michael going to be here?" And he goes, "It should be here in 15, 20 minutes. So now I know that at my steel door, Michael Anthony is going to be knocking on that in just a little bit. Dude, I was flipping out, man. I'm thinking, my God, this can't be real. This can't be real.
Mark.
So the whole time I'm waiting there, and sure enough, there's this boom, boom, boom at the door. I scurry down there. I'm thinking I pull that door open, and there he is, Michael Anthony, standing there, smile on his face. And I fanboyed out like a complete moron, man. I said, "My God, Michael." I said, "Dude." His hand, and I said, Stefan's upstairs, you know? So ironically, at that moment, there was a power outage. There were some electricians working in the kitchen and they messed up something and all the power went out and the emergency lights came on. And so I'm standing with Michael at the bottom of the stairs in pitch black. You couldn't see in front of your face. Then the emergency lighting kind of came on. It was super dim. And I had to help him up the stairs, make sure he did. My God, Michael Anthony fall down my stairs. That would not have been cool. So we got him upstairs. He goes in there and I could hear him in the dressing room. He was wishing them all well. He was not going to stay for the show. And he was in there for about 15, 20 minutes, but then he comes out and he's walking down and I almost was apologetic to him for being such a fanboy, you know, but he's so gracious and so kind. And he tolerated me, shook my hand again. I told him how much I loved him, right? It was almost probably 2 months later, I actually got to see him again at the club. He came there for another reason. He was there seeing a friend of his. I forget who it was he actually came there to see. I have to think about that for a minute. But his brother's band was a pretty good band. They had some really good songs. But it was interesting because when I was coming down the stairs with him, I said, man, your little brother's really cool, dude. I said, this is like one of his first gigs, you know. I'm trying to make conversation with Michael, right? And
Sure.
And I swear to God, guys, the look out of his eye, he looked out of the corner of his eye at me, and I could hear what he was thinking. That boy's going to freaking medical school. He's going to college. He's not going to do this. It's not happening. I swear that's the vibe I got from him. And I bet you money that I'm right. I'll bet you money on it. They were good, but they were not that good. There were lots and lots and lots of musicians, tons of guitar players and bass players and every kind of instrument that pertained to hard rock. And there were tons.
I was going to say, you've probably heard 1,000 bands that were great that never made it out of the club.
Do you know one of the greatest stories that I remember that's dearest to me? Cliff Burton had a band called Trauma, was their band. And they played the Whiskey on the regular in 81. They were regular, all those guys. And, but there was no Metallica at that time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Actually, let me back up. 1980, June, July, August, around August of 1980, okay, not 81. They're a regular band playing. Now, there was no Metallica. I didn't know anything about that. Cliff Burton didn't mean anything to me other than he was this guy named Cliff in a band, okay? I'm standing downstairs by the kitchen, and there was this office door right there, and there's this little wall where they would put upcoming bands. And from time to time during the week, I'd stand there and, I'd see when I was supposed to be there and this and that, what my schedule was. And I'd see what bands were booked to play because Michelle in the office would send down a band list. And so I'm standing there looking at it one night, and it was an afternoon. The club hadn't actually opened yet. Mm-hmm. And there's this guy standing next to me. He's standing there, and I kind of look at him. And he goes, "Hey, are you Chuck?" I said, "Yeah." And he goes, I was just upstairs talking to Michelle. I was submitting a demo tape to see if we could actually start playing here. My name's James." And so I looked this guy up and down, clean shaven, long blonde hair, wearing the most badass set of leather pants and leather jacket and cowboy boots and a Harley Davidson chain belt. His band that was trying out, their name was Metallica. It was James Hetfield. And him and Lars actually, now it was months later. It was still from that date, it was 6 months before Metallica had played the Whiskey. And when they initially played the Whiskey, it's not the Metallica you guys are used to.
No.
Days. In fact, if you listen to their, the album they put out called Garage Band Days, it's very much like that. That's essentially what it was.
Right.
There was no Cliff because they hadn't poached him yet from Trauma.
Right.
Lars looked like a little kid. He was a little kid. He used to run around backstage. Okay. Him and James would show up, and I didn't even realize what was going on for the of a year. And their sole purpose was to sniff Cliff Burton. and they ended up doing it. And I didn't know. I had no idea. History told us that, but that happened with a lot of bands. A lot of bands it happened with. I'll tell you another story if you want to hear it. I've told this story before, but it's so classic. There's got to be people here in the chat that would love to hear it. One night at a Motley Crue show, when Randy was alive, I never heard Kevin Dubrow on the Strip. At that time, and let me rephrase what I said. In 1980 and early 81, you didn't hear about Kevin Dubrow and Quiet Riot. The words were not together. Randy was in Quiet Riot, and they had a band, but when Randy passed away, things transpired to where Kevin and Frankie Vanelli, and they were best friends. They were very good friends. They were lifelong friends, in fact. Frankie Vanelli was Kevin Dubrow's very best friend. I could say that wholeheartedly. You didn't hear about Kevin. And all of a sudden, about 2 months after Randy passed away, you hear about this band called Dubrow. Okay. Now, I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know anything about Dubrow. I didn't know who Kevin Dubrow was. I really didn't know anything about Quiet Riot at the time either, because I was very young and just getting into it,
Sure.
But what actually happened was the Crew were playing a show, and it was a typical Friday, Saturday, 2 shows each night, sold out Crew weekend. And their backup, the starting band, opening band was Dubrow. And the first time I met Kevin Dubrow, the very first thing that came to my mind was, this guy's really arrogant. I mean, that, you get a vibe off people, his immediate vibe. Well, I'm just being honest with you guys. I said, this guy's not only arrogant, but he's going to give us trouble. That's what I thought. And so it ends up that the night, about 45 minutes to an hour before the first show, meaning when Dubrow was supposed to go on the stage, I was in Motley Crue's dressing room, and Nicky, he comes up, walks up to me, and he said, Charles, he says, do you know Kevin? And I said, I've never met him. I don't know anything about him. He says, well, let me just tell you. He says, drama follows him everywhere he goes. I don't know when it's going to happen. I don't know where it's going to happen. I'm quoting Nicky, by the way, quoting him word for word. I don't know when it's going to happen. I don't know where it's going to happen, but you can count on it. And it wasn't 45 minutes later, about 5 minutes before Dubrow hit the stage, he was running his mouth, and this is what he would do. He would pick out a weak point about a band. Now, in this particular situation, Motley Crue, they have a reputation of being partiers, right? Mm-hmm. Well, at that time, they partied a lot, but they kept their game together. When it came time to rock and roll, Tommy might drink a beer. He might drink one beer, but they would make sure they were relatively clean and that they were coherent and they were sharp, because this was, they took their life seriously. I just want you guys to know that Motley Crue did not fly by the seat of their ass. It might appear they did, but they were very focused and very driven to, succeed in their goal. And the proof is in the pudding, guys. You see what they did. They didn't get that because they just aimlessly got it. They earned everything they got. Now, what he did is he knew that the boys were up partying. I don't know how he knew, but he was running his mouth about it, and he was basically trying to tear Motley Crue down so that he could build himself up and upstage Motley Crue in their own club. And when I say their own club, they own that club. That was their club, okay? And everyone knew each other now. All these boys who were rocking, Frankie, they all knew each other. They all knew each other. Excuse me. But the drama ensued. It was a miserable night from a lot of aspects, and Motley Crue just really was not playing very well. One of the worst Crue shows I had ever seen. And I wasn't used to seeing the guys not sharp. I wasn't used to seeing them like this, okay? And so Kevin was actually trying to take advantage of these guys while they were down. He was vicious. He was a vicious, vicious dude, right? Anyway, the night goes off. and I told this story before. I was walking Nicky up that hill to his apartment. I had his bass, and he was dragging. Now, he wasn't in heels at that time. He'd thrown on some tennis shoes. Hack made a comment about that. I was telling a story to Hack once, and he was laughing about thinking of Nicky walking up that hill. That hill is steep. Clark Street is a very steep hill, and Nicky doing it in 5-inch heels. And I've actually seen Tommy do it in heels before, but no, he didn't even try. That would have been ridiculous. But as I'm walking up that hill with him, I looked right in Nicky's eyes, and I said, dude, you guys almost had your ass handed to you on a silver platter. And Kevin Dubrow had it. And he stopped for a minute, and he looked at me, and it wasn't like I offended him because we knew each other well enough. He knew I wasn't trying to be an ass to him. But at the same time, he had this really serious look on his face. I'll never forget it. I said, but before he even opened his mouth, I looked back down at the whiskey, because it was down the bottom of the hill now. And I said, guys, I said, Nicky, I said, you're still the king of that club. That's your club. Hey, he didn't kick your ass tonight, but he's probably telling everyone that he did. And that's pretty much the vibe about it. If you ask Kevin Dubrow who came out on top on that weekend, he would say, we did. We killed Motley Crue. We slaughtered them, blah, 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 because that was his nature. He was very vicious like that. Now, at the same time, I got to tell you, that guy could sing like you've never heard. He had a set of pipes that were stellar. He was in command. His music was good. He was a force to be reckoned with on the Sunset Strip. And he taught Motley Crue a real serious lesson at that point. Now, they were going through some rough times. It wasn't just that they were just partying this and that and the other thing. They were. Everyone was, okay? But they were going through management issues. They had all kinds of pressure. I mean, being in their position at that time, at those venues, and having the responsibility to kick it out like they were, they never should have had their guard down. And he taught them a lesson. And I will say this, the rest of the time that I spent around those guys, and I've seen Motley Crue close to 50 times. I've seen them a lot of times. They took their work very seriously, and I didn't see them, they have a track record of some bad behavior that certainly affected things throughout their career. But at that time, they were very focused and very serious. And they didn't let that happen again. That being said, Carlos Cavazo, you guys might know him from Quiet Riot, used to be in a band called Snow. And they were regulars at the Whiskey, a lot like Cliff's band Trauma was. They played all the time. In fact, if I were to say of any hair metal band, hard rock band that ever played the Whiskey when I was there, I would say I've seen Snow more than any other band almost. They were a regular. Snow actually in 78 is the band that opened for Van Halen at the Whiskey A Go-Go. There was a lot of vibe at that time because Carlos was a fantastic guitar player, you guys. He stood up. He shined like the sun. He was very, very popular. And he was also very faithful to that band. Snow had been around. So at that time, they opened for Van Halen at 78. They'd been around for a couple of years in 78. And so by 81, they were already an older band. And I actually was with Vince and Tommy one time. We were talking. And then the band Snow came up. Carlos came up. The topic was Carlos. We were actually talking, we were talking about Carlos's girlfriend, who was Ross, the roadie's younger sister, who was dating Carlos, and she had punched me. She actually punched me at the backstage door, almost knocked me out. A few weeks prior to that, we were having a conversation about that, and they were kind of laughing about it. And what he did was he showed up at that club on a night when Snow was playing, and he came through the backstage door. He had a guy with him. The guy was an executive. He was a record exec. He stood out like a sore thumb. And he took them upstairs. They walked into Snow's dressing room. They came out. They went to the back bowels hallways of the Whiskey upstairs. You go to this long back hallway. They were back there for 3 to 5 minutes. And when they came back, it was all hugs and kisses, hugging. Carlos had a smile from ear to ear, and he walked back in that dressing room, and Kevin Dubrow walked past me, and I swear to God, he gave me a wink, okay? About 2 minutes later, Ross the roadie comes out of Snow's dressing room, and he's upset. He's pissed off. He's pacing up and down, and he's mumbling to himself. And I said to him, I said, dude, what's going on, man? And he goes, you don't do that. And I said, what do you mean you don't do that? And he says, you don't come into somebody's dressing room and steal their lead guitar player. And I'm doing the math in my head, guys. And I'm thinking, he did not. He did not. Why would he do that? I didn't know anything about Quiet Riot. There was no Quiet Riot. There was no Mental Health.
Right.
But I'll tell you what there was. Snow had a song, the opening song that they opened their setup with for 4 or 5 years straight. And it was a Carlos Cavazos signature riff. It's Mental Health. That opening riff,
Right.
That's Carlos Cavazos riff. He not only took their guitar player, he stole that song. He turned it into $1 million song. And history. Look what we got out of it.
Crazy.
Yeah. I can't believe I actually got to see that happen.
Yeah.
The most single vicious thing I'd ever seen anyone do in Hollywood. And one of my
you just you can just title your book, A Fly on the Wall of Rock and Roll or something like that, right?
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, it was a lot of fun, man. Crazy. You can't do that job forever, guys, though. It's things would jump off like crazy. I mean, seriously, like I joke about it. When she punched me, she almost knocked me out, you guys. I saw stars for like 15, 20 minutes. I was still seeing stars. And everyone's main concern was that since she had hit me, that the band Snow was going to get 86th. Mario didn't put up with that crap at all.
Right.
Neither did Louis. I mean, and so after she hit me, my whole thing was trying to calm Carlos down. He was concerned, man. It was a big deal for them to lose. I mean, they had a position. They were still optimistic for their rock future.
Right.
But that is funny because when Dubrow went into that dressing room and took him, that's the last show Snow ever played, period. And yeah, it was crazy stuff. I really hate to see Vince like he is now, you guys. I want him to snap back. I want him to drop the weight, and I'm not expecting he never was a singer, okay? He's not a singer. You know who was a singer? Janie Lane. Janie Lane was a singer. Vince sang, but Vince was more like a David Lee Roth. He would present you with an attitude. It was more a situation and a place of being when he sang. Fantastic. He's fantastic. And back in the old days, he was so freaking good. It wasn't about being a virtuoso and singing. It was about the vibe and the time. It was all about the music. I don't know how else to put it. Yeah. I hate seeing him like that. I hope there's another Motley Crue tour. We talk about it all the time.
Yeah, it would be really cool to see Vince. Like if I think he does need to drop a little weight because he does get winded during a set.
Yeah,
and he's got to work on his enunciation. There's
some other underlying issues, I believe.
Yeah, there's something going on there. Like, I don't know. Here, do a line of this. No, I don't do that anymore. No, it's Adderall. Go do that.
Yeah.
There's big teleprompters instead of wedge monitors, whatever it's got to be,
Yeah. I'm not expecting a stellar performance. I'm expecting him to show up and just deliver.
Yeah. And as long as, Mick, if he needs to sit down and play, that's fine.
Hey,
whatever.
That would be fine. That would be awesome. I say that, the same thing about Dave. I'm a big David Lee Roth fan. I love David Lee Roth.
Have him call up, what's his name there? Dave Grohl, get that throne. Mick could sit on the throne.
It worked for Axl when he broke his leg and he was singing for AC/DC. So, hey, you know what? It's all good. But yeah, I really hope that things, I think, here's what I meant to say. I think a lot of bands, look, the Stones toured last year. If there was ever a reason not to tour because of COVID, the Stones are the last band who should have toured in 2020.
Yeah, literally.
In 2021.
Is there an older act that's even toured in the last 10 years?
That's what I'm saying. So I think a lot of bands, what I'm trying to say is I think a lot of bands are using it as an excuse. to mask health issues. I don't think we're going to see Ozzy again. I just
No.
don't think we are.
No. And if they want to transition into guess what they used to have in the 70s? They're called albums only band that never toured.
Yeah.
You know,
and he's actually doing that. He's putting out, he put out music last year. We got new music from Ozzy Osbourne last year.
Yeah.
You know, but Dave, I'll go see Dave if he's sitting on a chair, tapping one foot and mumbling and humming. I want to see Dave. If he's performing, I want to see him. I love Dave. If he's giving it out, I want to see it. I have that kind of positive attitude about Dave. It was interesting, you know, it's funny how the media spins things for our rockers and puts the negative forward. The reason Dave's last tour dates were canceled wasn't because Dave didn't have the health to do it. It's because the promoters canceled because of COVID.
Yeah.
You don't hear that. You see negative things on YouTube. People say this and that. He's not singing as good as he used to, but he still brings a show.
Yeah.
You know, he still brings a show.
I think, you know, my only drawback to Dave these days is he overcompensates for his lack of singing. There's a little too much stick and show.
Yeah.
You know, like when you're pretending to recognize everybody in the chat or everybody in the crowd, you know, he's got to wink and point at everybody in the crowd. Oh, come on. Like, you know, we're to the point where you're missing entire lines of songs.
Yeah.
Like, not even trying to sing them or like, just.
Well, okay. So, devil's advocate. David Lee Roth is known for leaving out entire sentences in concerts. Right. I've seen him a lot of times, and I've seen him drop whole phrases to take a drink from a bottle of Jack, to make a comment, to do something with a piece of something somebody threw up on the stage. He's been doing that forever. Okay. And so when I see him drop them, it doesn't really bother me. It doesn't bother me because, my God, he's 65 now?
Yeah.
He's 65. He's 65 years old. He was 5 years older than me when I was in Hollywood. So he's 65, yeah. I'll take it as long as I can get it, you guys. I want to see the rockers as long as they can put it out.
Sure.
I try not to be negative about it. If they're completely unlegible and they really sound horrible and they need to hang it up, I'm the last one who wants to admit it. I'll just say it like that.
Yeah.
You know.
And certain guys can get away. Like Lemmy, I don't know if he trailed off at the end, you wouldn't know. Like, it was loud and he growled and it was awesome and it was Lemmy. You know, like we don't know. You know, it's like Keith Richards. Like, you know, he's just playing fills and mumbles stuff into the microphone at times. You know, and it's Keith. We love him. And
yeah, I can't believe the Stones tour during the height of the COVID. I mean, that's like just literally, and nobody seemed to mention it. That's what kind of cracked me up about the whole thing.
Oh yeah, well, I think it's because they saw the writing on the wall. Like, obviously, Charlie's no longer around, which sucks.
Yeah.
And then Mick had that whole heart thing, you know, prior to that, and I think they realized, they're like, look, we have X amount of time. Brad Miller and I were talking about it on FaceTime yesterday. I was like, there's a lot of bands that realize, like, Charles, you know, like, we have 4 years left of us, so we need to, especially
that's the optimistic window.
Yeah, we have 4 years left of us as a band, and in today's world, you know, you might as well book a bunch of shows because it depends on where we are in the COVID cycle. You may or may not have, you know, so you're gonna, I don't, maybe play half the shows in a tour.
Yeah,
it seems.
Yeah.
Because it's sporadic month to month.
Yep.
And they realize, okay, well, we're just going to try to bank as much. Yeah, there's Brad. Yeah. You know, they're just trying to bank as much as they can. Like, you know, and I don't look as a greed thing because it's just bank as many shows so people like us get to see them too.
That's right. You
know, like, look at Genesis. Like, Phil Collins, they're literally like wheeling him out on stage.
And I still go see him.
Yeah.
He can still sing.
Oh my God! Yeah, I know. He can't do much else. Like, he looks like he should be in the park breaking up bread.
I can see him sitting in the air tonight.
Oh,
I don't care if he's sitting, laying down, whatever. It'd be worth it. Totally worth it.
Yeah.
You know.
So, I get it.
Anyway, yeah. Well, what do you want to talk about now? What are we talking about?
Well, I was like, should we go to the bottom of the hour? We've already done 2 hours here. Let's go to the bottom of the hour, and we'll definitely do a part 2 because people are asking for part 2s. Don't worry.
Wow.
Yes, because we're like just going.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. All right. Speaking of the Stones, any of them ever happen to pop into any of the clubs?
No, never saw them. Never saw any of the Stones. I worked some Stone shows. Jack Murphy Stadium.
Nice.
Was one of the last West shows I worked down in San Diego for their tour. That would have been 85, four maybe. I think it was 84. I'm within a year. And that's about it for the Stones, though.
Before their hiatus prior to Steel Wheels.
Yeah, and they're so fantastic. If you guys haven't seen the Stones, and you just even watching their stuff on YouTube does not even begin to do it justice. It really doesn't. To not see them live. And the funny thing about it is last year you could have seen the Stones. They toured. I can't believe they toured. I cannot believe the Stones toured last year. I know I keep coming back to it, but it's a mind-boggling.
Mick Jagger is like one of that handful of frontmen that could have a crowd of any size right there, palm of the hand. From the moment he's, it's like him, Freddie Mercury, and a few, like that type of just command of a crowd.
Yeah.
And it's just like with multi-generations of fans in the crowd, like you're going to hit, 3 generations of fans at any given Stone show?
That's right. You're pushing 4 generations now.
Probably 4, yeah.
Pushing 4.
Yeah.
I can't
Whereas
believe
most fans, it's 2 dipping into 3 at the other end.
Keith Richards is interacting regularly on YouTube. You can see him. In fact, the last couple of days, I've seen a couple of things where people are filming and making comments. He's out there.
Yep.
More now than he was 10 years ago, it seems.
Mm-hmm.
It's just really weird. It's weird.
It's like they're embracing life. It's like, it always seems like as people get older and like you got one of two ways. You can be grumpy and happy or old and happy or old and grumpy.
Yeah.
You choose. And and I remember just growing up, I always noticed that because in our family business, we had a very skewed senior clientele. And I noticed with seniors, they were either really happy or really angry. It's like one or the other. And I was like, well, why not? And Keith has definitely embraced the happy. Like, I think he's spending time around family when he's off the road, and whether it's grandkids or possibly his kids, who knows? But he's got that youth around him, which you can tell it's just that's the fountain of youth.
Yeah, they are. It's amazing. Stones.
Ronnie's Ronnie.
The Stones are what ruined the Beatles for me. When I heard the Stones.
They were just the cooler Beatles in many ways. I just thought.
When I heard the Stones for the first time, I think the first actual album that I actually heard, I was a kid, was Goathead Soup. And not only was that like the most naughtiest album on the face of the earth at the time, but it was the best music there was. And it, in my opinion, for me personally, in my,
right.
It put the Beatles, I tucked the Beatles away into a drawer. I'm sorry to say it, and it was all about the Stones.
I was wondering, like with this whole Get Back thing going on, it kind of brought that. I thought, like, if the Beatles had continued, what would they have gone? Like, if because they had enough power and control, like once they were out of their contract, which that was the last Let It Be, basically, if they all of a sudden wrote their own ticket, completely wrote their own I think they would have taken on more of a Stones thing. Like, look at the way the Stones matured into the 70s, like that rhythm and blues powerhouse where
it's very interesting you say that, Ben.
Like a lot of my favorite songs I'm listening to, I'm like, holy crap, Bobby Keys is all over this, but the Stones never officially had a sax player. Well, I think Billy Preston would have just been incorporated into the Beatles, and they would have just kind of progressed that way. And And it'd be almost like more like the Eagles are now, because it would be like the first corporate machine type thing. And they just get together and they do a handful of things live and their way.
Exactly.
Especially because they were friends with the Stones too. And, look at the way Mick, because when Mick started taking care of business in the 70s, because nobody else in the band, he looked around the rest of the band, and Charlie's like, I just play drums and you pay me well to do it.
That's right.
While I drink my tea wearing my suit. And then you look at Keith, and Keith's just, Keith. Mick's like, well, I guess I'm running the band. And Mick did that Iron Fist, and they get paid. Because you learn that from Chuck Berry. We do not get check in hand. We do not hit stage unless there's check in Mick's hand. Still to this day, they have to hand it to Mick. I love that.
That's who I regret never seeing. I never saw Chuck Berry. I did see Jerry Lee Lewis, though.
Nice.
And it was just a freak accident. I don't even remember the venue. It was in Redondo Beach or Torrance, California. There was a little, it was a place like the Comedy Store, but it wasn't a comedy store. It's not a comedy venue club. But I was driving by with my girlfriend, and it was like 1987, I'm guessing. And he was way up in age at that time, but he was still touring. Touring. And I sure as shit, I caught one show. Jerry Lee Lewis. Priceless, just priceless, man. Great balls of fire, dude.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because he's still touring because he spent it as quick as he made it, But he had a hell of a ride doing it. It's like when Willie Nelson was broke and owed the tax money around the same time. It's like, but I had a hell of a time getting here.
That's right.
All
right.
Nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong with it, Ben.
It's like, getting back to like gear acquisition. You want your last guitar to arrive post-mortem. It's like, dang it. Ben passed away yesterday and the guitar arrived today. Perfect.
There you go.
Yeah, that's going out the right way.
There you go. Excellent, bro. Excellent.
Yeah. Awesome. Jerry Lee Lewis. My dad will get a kick out of that. He's always a fan of the Killer.
Your family's great, Ben.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Well, somebody mentioned earlier, my sister had mentioned, like, Dad is starting to forget some of his stories, and he wished he had recorded a lot more of them earlier in life. And I do want to point out, we did like 3+ hangs together that are up on the channel, the Father's Day specials, and
I've seen
one of
them
guitars one night.
Your dad's awesome, Ben. Your dad's awesome. You got one of his guitars. Two of
his
guitars.
Couple of them.
Yeah, two of them.
Yeah, I got the Telly and the Martin.
Yeah. Very cool, dude.
He's like, what more do you need? He's like, I got a Telecaster and a 28. I'm like, yeah, that's pretty much it. That's all you need.
That's all he needs, man. No, that's way cool, dude. Way cool. Is your sister starting a YouTube channel?
She's more Instagram. She sticks to Instagram, and then she likes to come on here once in a while, and then she does videos for Patreon and my channel members. So if you follow, she doesn't have her own Patreon and membership, so she just piggybacks on mine, figuring, hey, maybe 3 of you will join up just because of her.
Excellent.
Which we're due to do some more videos. It's been a while. Things have been busy outside of YouTube, so. Sure. We do them when we can, and they're up there.
Are you guys going through another shutdown up there right now, or
pretty much?
How are things?
I went out to the music store the other day, but you got to like sign in, and which is, I get it. Sign in for contact tracing. I get it. And
there's basic public safety. You got
and very like capacity limits, and keep away from each other, and
Well, just because I'm vaccinated, that doesn't mean that if you're not, and I'm hanging around you, I can get you sick. I can carry it. I just won't get sick from it as much. I'll still get it. I've had COVID.
Yeah.
I've had it twice. The first time was unbelievable. Got vaccinated, got it again. They give you a small dose of it. That was kind of bad, actually. Got it again, but it was about half as bad as the first time I got it. And that's vaccinated. So, I wear a mask. That's what I do. When I go out in public now, I have this.
We haven't, yeah.
You know, I just
We
put
haven't
it up
had
on
a
there.
choice since basically since 2 months
Yeah.
after the last NAMM
Well,
show. That's how I always think of COVID, because it took until basically early March for everything to lock her right down. So it's like 2 months after NAMM, not even month and a half after NAMM. And
I remember
I
Johnny
haven't
Greene
been into
and
a
John
store since
Mancuda.
then without a mask.
I
We've never
remember
had
Johnny
a no
Greene and
mask
John
policy.
Mancuda walking down Hollywood Boulevard, I think it was. They were both sick. I mean, sick, fevery, and they're talking about how sick they were. I think they both had COVID. They call it Namthrax, but
Well, I was hanging out with Aaron from Elvis Band, and dude, he was sick when he arrived in California, like, because we're calling him Patient Zero, because he showed up sick, and he would go hang out at NAMM all day, come home, lay down, play on his phone, get up an hour later, eat some dinner, go to sleep for 12 hours.
wow.
Get up, feel like crap, go back to NAMM, come home, and repeat. Like, he was either asleep or at NAMM.
Wow.
And sick as a dog, and people were dropping like flies by the day, because you get news reports, because he's friends with all the pedal builders, and he's like, oh, Charles, this guy and this guy, like each day 4 more pedal builders, and I was just hanging out with them yesterday. I'm like, yeah, imagine that. I wonder why they're sick today, dum dum.
Yeah. Well,
I love Aaron.
It's not fun, So I wear a mask just to make sure that I don't spread it. In my business, I'm a pool contractor, so I go into backyards and I don't really have to interact closely with people. I'm out in the air all the time.
And outside is good. Sunshine.
You got to be careful. I just hate that you guys are going through another round of shutdowns. And I got to tell you, my God.
Well, it's that hybrid. Everything's limited capacity except for restaurants.
Clubs. Life isn't right unless Hack is playing in the bars every week. That's the way I see life. And yeah. I wish everybody the best, man. I just
cousin Doug's still having side effects from COVID. Oops. There we go.
Yeah. Wow. Wow.
Yeah, we only have basically no indoor dining. They're like, oh, you can have outdoor dining. I'm like, it's 20 below.
Yeah, how fun is that? That's only fun when it's nice outside, Yeah.
Oh, cool, Doug. All right, Holly, have a good one.
Hope to see you again. Take care, Holly. Love you, sweetheart. You be good.
We're live again, or I'm live again tomorrow night, 8 Eastern, with Terry and not likely Tom. Hashtag Tom's likely lurking. Tom's likely lurking. Yep.
By the way, let me give Tom a shout out.
Yeah, because we know Tom's been battling the COVID 2.0 himself.
Tom sent me these. You see these? These are called Malamars.
Malamars.
Now, I saw John Conklin eating these a couple of shows ago, and he was going through me like a whole box. He was starting another box, and I mentioned to him, I said, bro, I love those, and I haven't seen them in like 35 years. We can't get them here. We can't get them. And he was eating them. And Tom so sweetly sent me 3 boxes of these. I got them the other day. And Tom, I just want you to know I love you. And number 2, I'm on box number 2 already.
Nice.
And, thank you. I just wanted to thank him, Ben. He's Tom is awesome.
Yes, and Doug wants to point out that Doug and I will be live on Tuesday night as well at 8 p.m. Eastern over on the NASCAR Canucks channel, talking all things NASCAR.
Very cool.
School is new again. What am I talking about? Off-season testing. Yes. So we have something to talk about. Unlike previous years where they just shut down for 3 months, Charles. And it's like, so have you heard anything? We're like, yeah, but we can't talk about it publicly.
Talk about anything.
Yeah, a lot of that. So that'll be fun. So
excellent, man.
Yes.
Excellent.
All right, we'll wrap it up with one more story. How about that, Scott? He's like, I still want to hear any WASP stories.
Blackie Lawless. Yeah, I'll tell you something. One of the biggest shows that I regret not going to was WASP. They played. Get a load of this.
Yes,
my friend Johnny calls me up. It's 1983. I want to say 80. It's either 83 or 84. I may have the year wrong. I apologize. He calls me up. He says, guess who's playing the Trube tomorrow night? And I said, who? He says, Wasp is coming to the Trube. I said, no way. He says, yeah. And we were into clubs at that time, but I was also engaged. And I was doing other things. He says, they're playing with Anthrax, dude. And I said, Anthrax and Wasp are playing at the Trube. He says, that's right.
Ooh.
And he says, and if you don't catch this show, he says, tomorrow night, he said, or the next night, he says, and Megadeth is opening for Wasp. I didn't go to either show, you guys. I told him, I said I was busy. I shined it on. It is one of the single biggest regrets I have for not going to a show. I've only done it a couple of times. I procrastinated with Van Halen, which I will regret till the day I die. But I should have gone to that Blackie Lawless show. You know what they used to do in the early days, and this is no BS, you guys. Wasp would bring like strip steaks, meat, strip steaks, New York strip.
Right.
They would bring a couple of packs of those to the show, and they would throw it out at the audience. And the audience, like ravenous dogs, would rip at it and tear it to shreds right there on the dance floor. Like a version of a mosh pit, but not a mosh, just
right,
ripping at raw meat. Okay. Wasp's PR and the way they presented themselves was unheard of in the early 80s. And when all that stuff started going down, the mainstream media were all straight laced. And if we had every once in a while on the whiskey, we'd have a problem where someone would come on the stage and they would take their clothes off and then they'd go full nudity. It happened 4 or 5 times when I was there. The 2 biggest times I remember was one with Wendy O. Williams and another time with a band called The Damned from England, a very popular punk band, like the Sex Pistols, really on the same level. In fact, in the world of punk, they're considered almost more punk than the Sex Pistols. At least they were back in the day. They were hardcore. And
they were hardcore.
Well, so hardcore. I showed up there one night, and not only was there a riot at the club due to the cancellation, it was because the night before the lead singer took his clothes off, was standing on stage completely nude with nothing but a Les Paul. And the fire marshal walked in the front door and looked and shut the club down. The fine was ridiculous. It was a big deal, and it happened from time to time. And sometimes it was done intentionally. I swear to God it was, just to build up the band. So Wasp, talking about Wasp, they were marked as worshiping Satan. They were black marked. I mean, it doesn't matter. And they did everything they could to keep that bad reputation just as filthy bad as they could.
Yeah.
Because it was their PR. It was what their fans wanted. And so I got to see Wasp a few times. I've seen him a few times in LA.
Hey, JB too.
I missed those shows. And like I say, one was with Megadeth and the others with Slayer or Anthrax. Anthrax. I'm sorry. It was Anthrax. And no, I'm so sorry. Not Anthrax, Slayer. It was Megadeth and Slayer, you guys. Jeff Hanneman and Slayer. So rest in peace, Jeff, by the way. Wasp. Real cool. Probably one of they were certainly as edgy a band as you could be, and their reputation was just killer. It was funny because Nicky used to date, for about a year, he dated Lita Ford, and Lita ended up marrying Chris Holmes, the lead guitar player for Wasp. And I had the opportunity to see him a couple of times on the Strip. He was always really funny. He was a funny guy. He's still alive, so I'm talking about him like he's not around. I shouldn't be doing that. But he was just always a character, and he's one of the fondest memories I have of a rocker. Actually, a personal memory of time spent. That's a Wasp connection with me. So yeah, thanks for asking that question. I hadn't thought about that in a little while.
Nice. And yes, Keith, I am a huge NASCAR fan. Have been for 40 plus years at this point. Lifelong.
NASCAR's huge. North
Who
Carolina,
didn't date Lita Ford?
You know,
Charles will neither confirm nor deny he's ever dated Lita Ford.
Say that again.
John DeShane said, who didn't date Lita Ford? And I said, Charles neither confirms nor denies he ever dated Lita Ford.
Lita Ford is an absolute sweetheart. She's gone through some tumultuous stuff. You know, she was married to Tony Iommi. So she's technically been the first lady of metal. Absolute sweetheart. You know, she used to do, I told you earlier, I said one thing she used to do when she'd come back off the road, in whatever capacity, she would shoot down to the Roxy and give Mario a hug and a kiss. And then she'd go across the parking lot and go give Lemmy a hug and a kiss at the Rainbow Club at the same time. On more than one occasion, I'd be at the whiskey standing at the back door, and she would, or not at the back door, but at the backstage door, and I would hear her saying goodbyes to friends. Sometimes it was members of Rat or the crew, and she would say, "I'm going to go give Lemmy and Mario a kiss," and she'd take off and just waltz right up Sunset Boulevard. And I'm blessed with some really good memories. I have some really horrible ones I don't share with you guys, just some ridiculous stuff. It was not a happy, warm, fuzzy time all the time. Shit went crazy a lot of times. But the memories, I wouldn't cash them in for anything.
No doubt.
You know,
no doubt, my friend. Yeah. Well, on that note, we shall wrap things up here, folks. This has been an awesome hang, Charles. Everything.
Thank you for having me on, Ben. You know, I love you. You know, everything about this community is just awesome. I love everyone in the chat. You guys rock. And I want you all to be well and, you know, take care of yourselves. We still got shit we're going
and we
through.
will definitely do it again soon.
Anytime, guys. Thanks for having me.
I got a few things in the works, and then we'll definitely expect some things, folks. That's what I'm saying.
Very cool. Very cool. Very cool.
So next week we have on the Sunday night hang, Dane Zimmerman from Zim's Guitars is coming to hang out.
Dane is awesome, dude. He's awesome.
Super cool cat. So I'm looking forward to that. I've hung out on his channel, I think, a few times, and he hit me up. He goes, "Hey, we should do a hang," and I'm like, "Let's do it on my channel." He's like, "Let's."
Excellent. I'll be sure.
We're going to do that. It's going to be awesome. That's right, Amanda. She says, "Charles Greene, you are the real deal, man."
Amanda, you are awesome. Your brother's all right. Just don't tell him I told you that, okay?
I heard nothing. And Leo, you can. I saw you came in at about the 2-hour mark, so you can check out the rest on replay. You'll love it. Trust me, you'll love it. So, thanks again, folks. Everybody that tuned in tonight. Thanks again to my moderators for moderating, and of course, shout out to everybody that contributed tonight. Always a pleasure on that. Thanks, helps. You know. Everyone left a thumbs up. I think we're hovering around 60, 70 thumbs ups tonight, which is awesome.
Excellent.
And I'll be back, like I said, tomorrow with Terry. Not likely Tom. He's sick.
Get well, Tom. Love
Get
you,
well,
man.
Tom. And shush you, Doug. Maybe we'll break 55 subs on NAS Canucks, Doug. I don't know. Doubt it. Because Terry's not going to have a link in to throw into the chat for it before we end the show. And nobody here is going to sub that's already hasn't subbed, Doug. So let it go. On that note, that's Charles. I'm Ben. Sunday night hang. Again, if you're new, please subscribe. And we'll see you tomorrow night. Cheers, rock on, hold those doors open, let that lady ahead of you traffic, do good things, and good things will have you. Why? Down and Back with Corn Dog's wife is real. And by the way, check out Down and Back with Corn Dog if you're into that cornhole sport. He does a podcast that's second to none with a Canadian throw, twist, spin. Yep.
Vibe.
Have a good night, folks. Cheers, rock on. And of course,
well, guys.
Don't litter.